This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate first part of What If Naruto Became Kami Shinigami. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Naruto sat on the ground next to his body and fought back the tears. Nothing ever worked out despite his best efforts to get Sasuke to return for Sakura. Here he was now, face down in the mud from a Chidori to the heart, dead or nearly so. This time he hadn't been quick enough to avoid it. He turned to see Sakura assisting a limping Kakashi across the field. The only thing he regretted was not being able to bring that fool back for her. No, it wasn't accurate. He regretted other things. Never again seeing Ba-chan, never again eating ramen, never again training until he was exhausted, and never again seeing the faces of his friends. Nothing could be done, and there was a great deal of regret. He saw them pick up his body without saying a word to each other. I guess I wasn't even worth a few last words in the end. I wonder how soon the Shinigami will arrive. Naruto glanced to see if Sakura and Kakashi had noticed the bright light that seemed to fill the field they were in. They simply continued to move on, leaving him and his life behind. For the final time, he closed his eyes and allowed the tears to fall freely. At least his final hurrah had been a huge success. He took the fox with him if he ever accomplished anything. His eyes were all white when he opened them, and his lips hardly raised at the corner of his mouth. Everywhere he looked, it was white, save for a black fox-shaped mark beneath him. The mark remained with him wherever he went, directly beneath him. Interesting, isn't it? A girl his age was standing behind him when he turned to see where the voice was coming from. Even though she was only 17, she had an aged appearance, as if she had seen and experienced everything. She emanated a sense of peace, and Naruto felt at ease. He didn't mind dying as long as it included attractive girls like this one. His head tilted, and he studied the beauty before him intently. She had black hair that reached her mid-back in curls. Despite being pale, her skin appeared warm and glowing. When Naruto looked at her, he felt secure because of the almost maternal smile that adorned her face. This girl couldn't have hurt him, could she? Who are you? Where is this place? Why am I here? Am I dead? One question at a time, young one. Now what do you want answered first? Young one? I'm sorry, miss, but you look as old as me. At this, the girl let out a melodic laugh that seemed to tinkle and dangle in the air. It was enjoyable. You flatter me, young man. My age cannot be measured in numbers. I guess you could say my age is infinity. Are you an angel? Better. You mortals know me as Kami? Kami looked at Naruto in distress as his eyes widened and a distressed expression came over his face. Without hesitation, the orange-clad ninja dropped to his knees and hung his head. Kami asked him what he was doing, puzzled. Forgive me, Kami. Sama, I meant no disrespect. I am sorry, please forgive me. I am not worthy to be in the presence of one such as you with all the blights on my soul. Please pass judgment on me and let me be on my way to wherever you deem fit in hell. Kami scowled in response. Did mortals treat one another like this in their free time? Tear each other down to the point where they doubted their own value and were prepared to burn in hell for sins they had never committed? Why do you say those things, Naruto? Surely you don't believe that. The spots on my soul are from the fox. I know this. It's been explained to me several times that I am bound to the fox and he to me. Our souls are bound together and therefore his sins are my sins. Nothing I could do would make up for his sins and therefore I deserve to be punished. Please, Kami. Sama, I deserve no less. Kami knelt before the young man on his knees after strolling the distance to him. She put her hand on his cheek and smiled slightly. She cupped his chin and raised his eyes to hers when he refused to look up. Tears were streaming down his cheeks as he kept his eyes screwed shut. Seeing a child like him, a human sacrifice, willing to take punishment for actions he never took, broke her heart. Long ago, his place in heaven had been guaranteed. Naruto, open your eyes and look at me. Let me tell you where we are right now. We are at the junction between the living and the dead. You are neither dead nor alive right now and you are not being judged. True, your soul is bound to the foxes but only as two prisoners are fettered together at the ankle. One prisoner does not answer for the deeds of the other, they are merely chained together until their jailer brings the key. I am sorry, Naruto, but your key is not yet ready to be used. You must keep your burden a while longer. Now rise and speak with me. I have something to ask of you. Naruto got up and wiped away his tears. He asked where they were, giving Kami an apologetic look. We are in a plane made of your soul. You have heard of yin and yang, correct? The light contains some dark and the dark some light. This is how balance is kept. Where we stand and all around us is your soul, Naruto. The fox-shaped blemish on your soul is that of Kyuubi and he stays under you because he is bound to you. Look around you, Naruto, and you will find that your soul is pure with nearly no blemish. You are as pure as they come, and that is why you are perfect for the task I must set before you. What is it you seek of me, Kami? Sama, ask and I shall do anything you require of me. Kami grinned as she noticed the boy she had been keeping an eye on since he was a little child gradually returning. She joked with him, choosing for a moment to pretend to be a little girl rather than the kind creator. Burn that outfit. It's hideous. Kami laughed as Naruto stood there, his mouth and eyes wide. His speech was tentative and halting. But orange is your gift to the world, Kami. Sama. Why would you want me to destroy something as beautiful as my suit? Oh Naruto, you can't take a joke. That isn't my request. Although I do wish you would get rid of that thing, and I will send someone later to tell you what I wish you to wear as my emissary on Earth. I need you to find a certain soul and send him to me. His crimes are of a heretical and most unholy nature. You will act as my liaison and claim his soul for me. You want me to act as a Shinigami? Don't you already have someone for that job? Of course, but he has to follow certain rules, unlike you. I give you full reign to act as you see fit. Consider the power I give you as another test on your life and soul. When you return after your life is over, we shall see if the fox is the only visible blemish on your pure soul. Now then, I'm going to give you a weapon to help you on your path. You'll receive it when you regain consciousness and are ready. I'm not ready now. No, you will be weak when you wake up. Rest and gain your strength. When I think you are prepared, I will send my messenger to deliver my gift and help you choose clothing appropriate for my emissary. Goodbye for now, Naruto. We will see each other soon. Naruto was back in his body the next thing he knew, and his breathing was labored and it felt heavy. He opened his eyes and noticed light coming in through a window. He was lying in a hospital bed with several machines attached to him. He slowly swiveled his head to gaze at the nightstand. He was not greeted with cards or anything. He let out a sigh. The same thing happened every time. Even though he had friends, they were too busy to come see him. After closing his eyes, he reclined. It would be wise to take a nap and prepare for the future. He knew he was going to get a tongue lashing when he heard familiar footsteps clomping down the hall, ending his brief period of rest. Tsunade checked Naruto's chart while standing at the end of the bed after opening the door. She sighed and arched an eyebrow. Naruto, you're not fooling anyone. I can see by the heart rate monitor that you're awake. We need to talk. Naruto gazed at Tsunade after opening one eye. For once, he just wanted to sleep, even though he loved the old woman dearly. That dream about Kami was a little unnerving because he had been through a lot in the last few days. He was unsure whether or not he believed it. Perhaps he never left and it was all a dream because he had no memory of returning to Konoha. All right, Ba-chan, what do you want to talk about? Your battle with Sasuke. What happened? Sakura and Kakashi didn't tell you. He stabbed me through the chest with a Chidori. End of story. I passed out and they drugged me back, I guess. Well, you should be good to go in a couple of days. You can be released then. Rest until then, you hear? I'd like nothing better. I mean it, Naruto, you'd better. Did you just agree with me? Yes? Don't go insane on me, brat. I can't be the only sane one in this hellhole of a village, all right? I need you to stay with me. I'm not going anywhere, Ba-chan. I'm right here with you, forever. When he said that, Tsunade's glare softened. The fact that he saw her as a regular person and not the Hokage was comforting, even though she detested the nickname Ba-chan. Just get rested, kiddo. We need you out there again. Hi. I think for once I will take it easy. After 3 days, Tsunade allowed Naruto to leave the hospital on the proviso that he take it easy and refrain from overtraining or exerting himself. He was standing in Team 7's training grounds, going through the motions of trying to get his muscles loose enough to be used for training. He would return to his peak performance in a few days, but it would take some time. There was no breeze, but he felt someone behind him and turned to see a man in white robes with short brown hair blowing in the wind. He carried a huge warhammer on his shoulder that had never been seen before. He gave Naruto a smile and extended his hand. Hello, young one. My name is Sanosuke. I am the go-between for you and Kami. Sama. I hope to be good friends with you. You have a lot of promise, you know. Naruto, on the other hand, had barely heard a word and was staring at the man blankly. He could only conclude that it had not been a dream, that everything was real, and that he had met Kami. He glanced at the strange appearance of the huge war hammer resting on the man's shoulder. By no means was it fancy. A plain block of steel with golden bands around both ends served as the hammer's head. The entire hammer appeared to have been poured from the same mold, and the handle was made of steel. Leather thongs created a cozy grip by encircling the handle's hilt. After giving Naruto a smile, Sanosuke swung the hammer to the ground, where it struck and created a crater. How heavy is that thing, Sanosuke? It must weigh a ton. Hi, it does. But to you it will be as light as a feather. It is made especially for you and is a holy weapon. This is one of Kami's gifts to you. If you prove worthy of her time, she will bestow upon you the remaining gifts. You are to learn how to use this hammer from your soulmate. She will guide you in its use and you will be happy in your life. But Sakura-chan doesn't wield weapons. She can't teach me how to use it. When her name was mentioned, Sanosuke frowned and pounded the hammer on the floor once more, drawing Naruto's attention. Now see here, Naruto. The world does not revolve around your pink-haired friend. She is not your soulmate. There is another out there who is worthy of your time and devotion. She can train you in the art of weaponry. You know her already, she is here in this village. Wait a second. Soulmate? I already told Neji I don't believe in fate, so why would I believe that I'm destined to be with a certain someone? You already think that, you fool. You keep pining over Sakura and she wouldn't be seen with you in public in that light. Your soulmate waits for you. You'll know who she is by the tightening of your heart and a deep connection. Have her teach you Kenjutsu, it will help you to wield the hammer better. They're basically the same property anyway. But why a hammer? Why not a sword? Sanosuke gave his youthful charge a smile. He simply refused to accept the obvious. He wasn't as foolish as he made himself out to be. Naruto was held back by immaturity and inattention rather than stupidity. This hammer is young, Naruto. It was only recently made and it was made for you. We made it fashioned after your soul. Right now the hammer is blunt and dull, screaming for attention with the two golden bands, and since you have no knowledge of how to wield it, it will be a challenge to train. This reflects you in your earlier years. You had promise, just as this hammer has promise. I told you it is a holy weapon, and that is true, but it is also connected to you at the soul. As your soul evolves, so too shall the hammer. You mean it'll change on its own? Yes, overnight, while you sleep it will begin its transformation. It will begin to reflect your soul now. Now come and accept your weapon, Naruto. We have something else to do. With ease, Naruto hefted the hammer as he walked forward. He swung it several times to get a sense of its weight and was astounded by how light it was. He swung the hammer to Sanosuke's shoulder and smiled, sensing that he was growing restless. So what's task number 2? Naruto started to perspire as Sanosuke gave the young man in front of him an evil smile. His favorite part would be this. He expressed gratitude to Kami-sama for giving him the chance to get rid of yet another scoundrel. I'm the one who's also taking you clothes shopping. You must dress appropriately if you are to be Kami-sama's liaison in this world. Nothing but the best, and I have just the idea for your battle garb. Come. As he and Sanosuke made their way to the tailor, Naruto accepted the looks. Even though it was already awful, he was now drawing a lot of attention because he was carrying a huge warhammer. With a sigh, he continued. I hope Sanosuke won't subject him to too much torture by dressing strangely. His traveling companions simply plodded along, contemplating all the ways to make his charge appear more like an angel and less like Kami's servant. After giving the two men a sidelong glance, the man in the clothes store asked Naruto to leave his weapon of mass destruction outside. When the enormous weapon struck the ground, the villagers' reactions were priceless, and Naruto lingered at the door for a while to observe some of them attempting to pick it up. He was content that his holy weapon was secure and that no one else could touch it when even the largest man in the area was unable to move it. Returning to the entrance, he saw Sanosuke conversing with the tailor, who appeared interested in the man's thoughts. Do you understand what I want? It must be in the design I gave you and of the best material. Price is no object. Until the battle gear is prepared, however, we need some temporary clothing to get rid of this abomination. What do you have in simple shinobi gear? We have many things, sir. Anything in particular you would like? Just size him up for everything in black. Loose, but fitting, and get him some actual boots instead of sandals, steel-toed if possible. He'll thank me later. Now then, Naruto, kindly let the man measure you so we can get this over with. He informed me that once measurements were taken your battle garb would be finished within the week. He'd call for you then and you can pick it up. How am I going to pay for all this? I don't have enough on me to cover it. Do not worry, young one. Kami will provide. Have faith in Kami. Without fail, his measurements were taken, and Naruto was becoming a little agitated. He detested spending so much time sitting motionless, but he had been oddly calm over the last few days, as if he had somewhat relaxed. Sanosuke spoke up after noticing the boy's internal conflict. I see you have noticed that you can think a bit more clearly than before. Your meeting with my master did that. She has a most calming effect on the mind, and in your case it seemed to help your cognizant thought process. You should meditate and try to talk to her again. I believe it would be beneficial. Perhaps. I might try it later tonight. I like the feeling of being able to think clearly, it's nice. Indeed. I must go now, Naruto. I shall see you again soon, I hope. Remember what I said about your soulmate. Find her and cherish her. Do not let yourself be taken in by false hope of a love that can never be requited. Goodbye for now. And without a puff of smoke or anything else, the man vanished. He simply stopped existing on this plane. Not a cigarette. When I see him again, I'll have to ask him to teach me that. The week flew by for Naruto, who mostly spent it alone, training in a secluded area of the village to learn how to use the holy weapon, at the very least, before he went in search of his soulmate. He tried to contact Kami and speak with her again while meditating when he got bored. Since he never once got in touch with her or Sanosuke, she must have decided he wasn't ready to talk to her again. He received a summons to return to the tailor at the end of the week. He had a number of them made and his battle gear was ready. He had been concerned about how he was going to pay for his new clothes, but Sanosuke assured him that Kami will provide, and the money strangely appeared in his bank account. He returned to his apartment to try on his new appearance after taking the wrapped bundle of cloth. Naruto decided he didn't want to get his clothes dirty just yet, so he took a shower and let the water wash his problems away. Thinking of his hammer made him smile. No one was strong enough to steal it, so he just left it outside his apartment. Thinking of the expressions on people's faces when he swung it to his shoulder and left like it was a feather made him laugh. I enjoy playing with people. After taking a shower, he went outside and unwrapped the package. It made him smile to see what he saw. His temporary clothes, as Sanosuke referred to them, were simple, but they still suited him better than the orange. He looked like an angel in his new battle gear. It included a white silk gi that flowed around his body and white pants. The gi was held together by a blood-red sash tied at the waist that appeared to move on its own. The sash fluttered and flapped like he was standing in a hurricane due to the slight breeze produced by the air conditioner. Without a doubt, its purpose was to attract the enemy's attention. The markings on the back of each gi, however, were what shocked him the most. The majority of the back was covered in a yin-yang circle, but instead of a dot representing good or evil, there was a nine-tailed fox's body on exhibit with its tail spread wide. He was immediately enamored with it. Even though he despises the fox, Kami clearly approved of this, so there was nothing wrong with it. Grinning, he spread out the clothes for the following day. When he arrived at Tsunade's office, he would undoubtedly surprise her. As expected, Naruto continued to draw attention as he carried his hideous hammer through the streets. Though good things come to those who wait, things hadn't changed as Sanosuke had predicted. Perhaps the angel simply misjudged how the hammer was assessing Naruto's soul because nothing he had said had been false thus far. However, Naruto did observe that not every glance was a glare. He could hear some of the girls whispering about the attractive blonde guy, and he could see that many of them were flushed. Grinning, he continued toward the Hokage Tower. It was supposed to be a good day. When Tsunade heard Shizune arguing with someone outside the door, she was, for once, preoccupied with her paperwork. She listened while concentrating some chakra on her ear. Don't care, you're not bringing that thing in there. Leave it outside, Naruto. I'm not playing around. If you drop it, it's going to go through all the floors. I'm not gonna drop it, Shizune. It'll stay on my shoulder the whole time. And besides, Chan's a busy woman. I'll just show her what I got and be on my way. No big deal. Now let me through. Put that hunk of metal back outside. Shizune, move. Well, that was unexpected. With Shizune, Naruto never uses force. Tsunade's thoughts were interrupted when the door opened and Naruto had to duck to enter. Normally, she gets her way by bossing him around like an older sister, but if he resorted to yelling at her, the brat must have something important to tell. One destructive blonde in the Hokage office was enough, so Shizune followed him to remind him not to drop the damn thing and leave a hole in the floor. Shizune left out in a huff, she wrote. Naruto sighed. After yelling at her, he would have to do her a favor. Tsunade was prodding his hammer when he turned to face her. What the hell is this thing, Naruto? Have you and Tenten been playing around in the old weapons shed again? No, and we don't play around in there. We search for old weapons that she can resharpen or remold into better weapons. This is mine. It's a holy weapon given to me by Kami. Since when did you become religious, kid? I didn't. It's a gift from Kami to help me find a certain soul she wants. It's enchanted, so only I can pick it up. Here, try to lift it off my shoulder. No matter how hard Tsunade tried, the damn thing would not move. Additionally, she had taken Gamabunta's Kodachi. It must be a magical thing. She couldn't understand how Naruto got an enchanted weapon, though. The luck was all with the damn kid. Well, the weapon is dull like you, but what about the clothes? I like the new style, Naruto. It's definitely you. Thanks, it was a gift from a new friend. He said my jumpsuit was hideous and burnt it once I got my new clothes. Well, where is he? I want to give him pay for an S-rank mission. That's been on the pay scale for quite a while to rid the world of that damn jumpsuit, and someone finally had the balls to do it. You know, I've actually outlawed the sale of orange jumpsuits in Konoha because of you? But orange is the color of the gods. It's a gift from Kami herself. Herself? I thought Kami was a guy? Naruto smiled sheepishly and shrugged. She appeared to me and told me that she was neither, but I'm more at ease around women, so she appeared as a young girl. Real cute too. Too bad she's so much older than me. She'd be worth the effort. You'd actually hit on Kami. Naruto, you're insane. But that's what I like about you. Now get out of here and go train with your weapon. I have things to do. Before I get out of your hair, I have a favor to ask. I need time off to find my soulmate, who's going to train me in the way of using the hammer by teaching me kenjutsu, okay? Tsunade simply nodded naively and arched an eyebrow. After defying death, the child is now Kami's right hand man, or what? She thought. Fuck this job. I'm too old for this shit. She dialed Shizune by pressing the page button on her intercom. Shizune, bring some sake and 2 cups. I think you and I are going to need to be shit-faced before the day is over. Tsunade was shocked to hear her assistant respond in this way when a quiet voice returned over the intercom. After seeing that big-ass hammer he's lugging around, I went and bought a few bottles of good stuff. I think you and I are going to be holed up doing paperwork for quite a while. Ah, thought Tsunade, good old Shizune. She never fails, and I'm mad at that brat for constantly giving me headaches. Tsunade slammed her head against the desk after realizing her error. With nothing to do but train and search for his soulmate, she would grant the little bastard an endless period of time off in the village. She let out a loud groan. That kid running loose was going to make that mountain of paperwork. Wondering who his soulmate might be, Naruto walked through the town. He was clearly familiar with her, but who might it be? He had many acquaintances, many of whom were skilled in kenjutsu. Unaware of Grace, he headed to the training grounds and started swinging the hammer wildly, deciding to worry about it later. He still bemoaned the fact that he had been handed a hammer rather than a sword, but it was simply not his style. A sword could deal a great deal of damage because it was sharp and pointy. In what way could this object accomplish something that a sword couldn't? It was so boring and uninteresting. Naruto took a seat cross-legged in the center of the field, holding the enormous hammer in one hand while resting his elbow on one knee and his chin in the other. He caught a glimpse of it out of the corner of his eye and absorbed it once more. The handle appeared to flow into the head and was at least 4 feet long. The hammer's head was enormous, measuring about 3 feet in length and 2 feet by 2 feet in square. He kept receiving strange looks in town, which was understandable. He closed his eyes and considered his current predicament. After saving Sasuke, he already had a lot on his plate, and now he was supposed to find a renegade soul? He held his head in his hands and dropped the hammer. His age was 16. In his navel, he carried a demon capable of destroying entire civilizations. Kami herself had just told him that Sakura was not his match. He would have to move on and get over her, even though it hurt. He made a commitment and never broke it, but he still needed to save Sasuke for her. To be able to use his hammer effectively, he needed to find his soulmate and master the art of the sword. Why did he always feel like he was carrying the entire world? With a heavy sigh, he opened his eyes to discover that it was night and the world was completely dark. He hadn't realized that night had fallen because he had been thinking so much. The time had come to return home. Maybe his hammer would change tonight. He walked off in the direction of his apartment after swinging the hammer to his shoulder. With a loud thud, Naruto put the weapon down outside his building and ascended the stairs. He sensed a presence as he opened the door and swung 2 kunai at the dark figure. He flicked on the light after hearing the distinct thump of the knives striking home and discovered Sanosuke there, frowning and holding the kunai in his chest. As the angel took out the knives and lamented the destruction of his shirt, Naruto smiled sheepishly. I just had this thing cleaned, Naruto. Can you be any more problematic? Well, I'm sorry, but you surprised me. I couldn't help it. What are you here for anyway? I want to know why your hammer hasn't changed yet. It should have made its first change, and where is your hammer? Oh, I left it downstairs. I don't want it falling through the floor. You idiot. That's why it isn't changing. You have to sleep with it in your hand. What in the hell made you think it could change if it wasn't by you? You may be connected to the soul with it, but you still have to have contact with it to make the change. And you wonder why everyone calls you an idiot. I'm not stupid, you don't think before you do things. Sigh, Naruto. Just get the hammer and sleep at the training grounds tonight. Sleep with the hammer in your hand and don't let go. If you prove yourself worthy by changing the hammer, I'll give you the other gift a little early. Is it another cool weapon? No, it isn't cool, but it is a weapon, perhaps more important than the hammer. I won't tell you what it is though until you change the hammer. Now get going. Oh Kami, why do you make me deal with these idiots? Naruto complained as he took out his hammer as the angel vanished into thin air. He didn't particularly want to spend the night outside after returning from the training grounds. He needed to replace the hammer, but the sound of a shower in his bed was so much better. Back at the training grounds, he walked slowly and paused at the first one he saw. He didn't care who it was. If he got in the way, they could wake him up in the morning. Staring at the stars, he collapsed on the ground. He twirled the hammer in his hand and hummed as he held it at his side. He yawned after a little while and finally fell asleep with his hand firmly gripping the hilt. Shortly thereafter, an odd dream began. Naruto was by himself in the dream, and everything was dark. When he spoke to Kami, a bright light and a white world appeared, reminding him of his soul. Then the crowds of people arrived, but despite his best efforts to attract their attention, they ignored him and continued to move. As they passed by, he saw that they all looked down and behind him, then turned their noses up and moved on. He was intrigued when he noticed that his shadow resembled that of a fox, which followed him everywhere he went with its 9 tails flapping in the background. An elderly man with a gentle demeanor emerged from the crowd, smoking a pipe and sporting a humorous hat. He was encouraging to Naruto and showed him kindness. Naruto felt his heart lighten as he grinned at the elderly man. If it wasn't his imagination, the fox appeared to have shrunk when he looked at his shadow. As he turned to face the elderly man, he noticed a younger man with his hair pulled back in an odd ponytail. Though he was strict and expected more from Naruto than he provided, he was also kind to him. Naruto was happy that he was at least being seen, even though the rest of the crowd continued to pass. Another man, a young girl, and a young boy emerged from the crowd. They acknowledged Naruto's presence and stood there staring at him, but they refused to speak to him. When a young boy approached, Naruto sensed his wonder and admiration, and the fox became slightly smaller. Then a figure appeared whose silhouette Naruto would remember for the rest of his life. Even though he couldn't see the eyes, the dejected smile conveyed all the information he needed to know about the effeminate young man. Naruto almost burst into tears as his heart ached. This had been the closest thing he had ever had to a friend, someone who could relate to him, but the boy disappeared as soon as he appeared, leaving Naruto sad and the fox slightly larger than before. 6 figures of children his age emerged from the ever-rising crowd, and they all gave him a nod. 3 others appeared, and one of them respected him in a way that only those who have suffered and struggled for recognition could. He would always cherish this friendship. The girl was indifferent to him. She saw him, but the other boy treated him with disdain. 3 more adults appeared behind the 9 kids, and they gave him a kind look. The fox also got smaller. 3 familiar faces then appeared. A girl, 2 more boys, and a boy. One boy, with the shadow of a tanuki behind him, strode forward and grinned madly at him. After a moment of their shadows fighting, with the fox and tanuki shades growing larger and larger, the 2 boys stood and looked at one another. They grinned, knowing that they had found someone who understood their suffering. At this moment, Naruto saw the old man disappear with a melancholy smile on his face, and he felt a pain in his heart. His place was taken by a tall, broad-shouldered, long-haired man. He was pleased when 2 more women approached him from behind and gave him a look. These 3 recognized his true nature. The fox continued to shrink. He caught a glimpse of the first boy's fading from the corner of his eye, until he was merely an apparition, no longer living but in spirit. However, his shadow persisted, alerting Naruto that saving him would probably be very difficult and expensive. Standing next to the boy, the girl looked sad and on the verge of tears. All Naruto could do was observe and feel powerless. The fox also slightly grew. The tall, long-haired man and Naruto then started to move through the crowd after all the other figures vanished. For what seemed like an eternity, they continued to walk, and as Naruto felt himself growing, the ground appeared to move farther away from his eyes, and the fox's shadow grew larger. The figures returned, but this time they were larger, more experienced, and they all gave him a kind look. He had gained more friends and made progress. The boy's apparition had also grown, but it had become darker, as though it had been tarnished by evil. Naruto was perplexed by this and wanted to save the boy. Naruto hurried to where he was, heart heavy, as the boy with the tanuki shadow blinked out of existence before he could think. However, he reappeared as quickly as he had vanished, this time without the tanuki's shadow, and Naruto was pleased for his friend. He survived. However, he observed that one of the figures appeared to be more distinct or perhaps brighter than the others. He felt his heart lighten when the panda-like girl with the bun hair smiled at him. However, things changed once more, and someone else appeared. This individual, who wore an odd forehead protector, was patient and kind to him. He was accompanied by a figure that resembled the apparition, but he lacked personality and appeared to be obsessed with Naruto's penis. Naruto made peace with the odd figure despite the fact that he was bothersome because he realized that all he needed was a friend to guide him. 3 of the figures his age were profoundly saddened when one of the adults blinked out of existence and never came back. This also saddened one of the adult women, who was now pregnant. The fox also got a little bigger. Once more, the scene shifted, and Naruto found himself in a dire situation with the first girl and the first boy. The boy's dark, evil, radiating shadow held a completely dark figure whose soul was so corrupted by evil that it was impossible to see the figure itself, but could be recognized by its indistinguishable outline and the way it held itself. The fox kept growing until it was about to engulf Naruto, but the man with the odd headdress rescued him, and the girl cried for him, and the fox moved away. Naruto was once again in front of the first boy as the scene changed for the final time. They continued to battle, neither of them winning, until Naruto, feeling sorry for the boy, failed to complete his blow and the boy attempted to kill him once more. He recalled meeting Sanosuke, getting his hammer, and meeting Kami. Before everything darkened once more, he saw the outline of the person who would be his soulmate flash before him one final time. The fox was also smaller than before. Naruto floated in the darkness, reflecting on what he had witnessed. There was only one thing he was certain of. I am strong without you, even though I love you all. People come and go, and even though it hurts when you leave, my heart heals and I move on. Please pardon me, but I can't keep playing the fool for you any longer. I cannot fail at anything Kami puts in front of me because my soul and others depend on it. I swear to you, friends, I swear. Uzumaki Naruto will never desert you, even if some of you do. I will repay you tenfold for any kindness you have shown me in my brief life, and I will always remember you. But I will no longer show mercy to those who have fled to the dark. Yes, my sympathy and compassion, but no longer my mercy. Sasuke, Orochimaru, please have mercy on your soul, I will not. And the fox's shadow got even smaller. His hammer was responding to its wielder's dream outside of Naruto's waking mind. It appeared to hum contentedly, thrilled that its owner had reached a decision that pleased it. The hammer started to change, starting with the hand holding it. Its leather thong grew more defined, thicker, and plusher, with elaborate patterns that appeared to be burned into it. A white flame design licked up the side all the way to the head, and the dull gray steel turned dark black as the magical transformation slowly made its way up the handle. The gold bands expanded until they formed a cocoon, like encirclement around the hammer's head. Cracks slowly appeared until it finally exploded, exposing the warhammer that had been changed. The hammer appeared to be the holy weapon it was because of its pure white body and the elaborate gold patterns that snaked around it. The bands had vanished from view. A huge spike that was as dark as night and did not reflect any light rested atop the hammer. The hammer's ends were still flat, but there was a kind of powdery material that shimmered in the morning light around their edges. The dot was replaced by the shape of a fox in the yin-yang symbol on either side of the hammer. This was the scene that caused Tenten to stumble. Although she hadn't had time to question him about it, she had noticed Naruto walking around town with the enormous piece of metal. She cherished all weapons, so it was a treat to see someone wielding a rare weapon like a warhammer. Naruto couldn't have been using a weapon like that, especially one that large. She doubted that he could swing it at all. When she arrived early that morning to begin her training, she discovered Naruto unconscious. She intended to wake him, but she was enthralled with the spectacle his hammer produced instead. This was undoubtedly a magical weapon, unlike any she had ever seen and might never see again. She would approach quickly, inspect it, wake him up, and send him on his way without him noticing. She was fascinated by the hammer's design as she examined it. Its coloring was too ethereal to be artificial, and the shimmering around its edges was also unnatural. She felt her finger sliced open as she slid it over the powder-like surface. She drew the finger back and examined it in the early morning light. Blood? She looked more closely at the powder and almost let out a gasp. There were pieces of diamond sticking out here and there, and it was diamond dust. If they managed to recover from the force of the weapon, this hammer would rip apart anything it came into contact with. Examining the fleeting object of her interest, she looked at Naruto with the intention of rousing him. She was unable to do it. She simply sat there and took in his appearance. She believed she had never seen anyone look so innocent as he lay there, despite the fact that he had matured greatly and witnessed a great deal of combat. She noticed his whisker marks had deepened over the years, and his hair blew barely in the slight breeze. Every time his nose twitched, lifting his upper lip, she could see the elongated fangs and saw his mouth slightly open, which made her smile. He appeared both tame and animalistic. The idea that such a strong ninja could be such a teddy bear outside of combat almost made her laugh. Sakura could slam his ass into the ground without trying, but he could easily defeat S-Class Nin. He just wouldn't harm anyone he regarded as a friend. She frowned as she considered the Uchiha. That's most likely why they haven't apprehended him. Simply put, Naruto is incapable of harming the bastard. She found herself looking into his deep blue eyes as she leaned over him to wake him. She almost gasped as her breath caught. The beauty and blueness of them had never really struck her. She almost melted in her shoes when she saw that smile of his. But when he glanced at her with half-lidded eyes and smiled slightly, she blushed almost too much. Wow, Kami is so good to me. I get a hammer and a pretty angel as gifts. I'm truly blessed. Tenten smiled as she passed out from a blood rush to her head. Tenten thought, to be treated so romantically by my own imagination. She had never heard anyone say anything like that before. People always thought she was a tomboy. Unfortunately, the blonde angel she had dreamed about had not been real. She would do anything to learn more about him if he were. She didn't want to answer when she heard her name being called from a great distance. She desired to remain with the angel with the blonde hair. No, don't force me to wake up just yet. Hey Tenten. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend or anything, please wake up. Tenten slowly opened her eyes, allowing the light to enter as gradually as possible. As her brown eyes opened wide, the image of the blonde angel that had been on her eyelids continued to solidify until she was looking him in the face. He was still there when she rubbed her eyes and blinked. She said the first thing that came to mind without giving it any thought. Seems Kami answered my prayer. The blonde angel is still here. Naruto blushed now, but he remained conscious. He was far too strong of a will to do that. Instead, he chose to shift the topic. So, what are you doing here so early, Tenten? I came to train early, but I found you lying here instead. I watched your hammer change. Is it enchanted? No, it's a holy hammer. It will change over time to suit my soul, I've been told. A man named Sonosuke gave it to me and told me to use it for Kami's will. Wow, that's cool. Do you know how to use it? No, I'm supposed to find a certain someone to teach me how to use it, but I haven't found her yet. Her? You're getting a woman to teach you? I don't think there are too many people besides Tsunade Sama who could pick up that thing, and even then none use hammers. I'm the weapons mistress of Konoha and I don't even know how to wield hammers properly. Well, I'm actually supposed to get a certain someone to teach me Kenjutsu, and Sonosuke said it would help me use the hammer correctly. I just have to find someone. I could teach you. I'm one of the best swordsmen in the village. Even though my heart says yes. Wait, says yes. Oh no, I couldn't impose on you. Oh, please say yes, please say yes. Oh, it's no problem. I don't mind at all, it's no trouble. I would suggest you say yes, Naruto. The young lady looks like she can become quite insistent and persuasive. Yeah, you're probably right, Sonosuke. What are you doing here? Sonosuke folded his arms and grinned. The boy had not yet realized that his soulmate was sitting in front of him. Well, that was just a little teasing for another time. He had to check the boy's new hammer right now. He picked it up and twirled it around. Amazing. It was true that the boy had a wonderful soul. It's impossible to predict how far this hammer would advance. He had never witnessed a holy weapon assume such a shape or appearance. After all, he had never seen a holy hammer before. Very good, Naruto. You've unlocked the first of many forms for your hammer. I applaud you for the way your soul reflects on it. Beautiful and yet deadly. Judging from the diamond dust around the edge, it signifies your diamond in the rough status. You are a rare gem waiting to be discovered and shown to the world. I commend you yet again. Both Naruto and Tenten thought, wow, that was poetic. Now then, Naruto, I need to give you your second gift. Come, stand before me and clear your mind. Carefully stepping forward, Naruto tried to focus his thoughts and think of nothing. After placing his hands on Naruto's temples, Sonosuke started presenting the boy with his present. As he watched, Naruto's facial features twisted, his teeth and whisker marks shifting between demonic and normal, and he gritted his teeth and suppressed a scream. After a few seconds, Sonosuke stood as though nothing had happened, and Naruto collapsed back onto the ground, panting. Tenten's gaze shifted from one man to another. What did you do to him? Sonosuke tapped his young charge's forehead and grinned at his unrecognized soulmate. I just gave him his second gift from Kami. Call it a jumpstart of his cognitive abilities. Now he shouldn't be so likely to jump into things without thinking. And maybe, just maybe, he'll see the pretty girl in front of him for what she really is. Make sure he stays out of trouble when he wakes up, okay? Bye-bye. Sonosuke disappeared from this world without a sound. Tenten was amazed that the man had not produced a puff of smoke or a swirl of leaves. It wasn't speed that caused him to simply disappear. She flushed once more as she glanced down at Naruto. He looks so handsome, damn him. She shook his shoulders and watched as his eyes opened for the second time that day, determined to end this. He blinked and stared at her as if she were crazy, but she gasped and grabbed him by the shoulders while gazing into his eyes. Tenten. Not that I mind being held down by a pretty girl, but can you let me up? What do you find so interesting in my eyes anyway? After reaching into her pack, Tenten produced a mirror and raised it to his eyes. After a mere 2 seconds of checking his eyes, he dropped the mirror and picked it up again. What the hell did he do to my eyes? I don't know, but they're more beautiful than ever. Naruto's eyes were wide as he gazed at her. He believed that the people were simply being nice, even though he had previously been told that he had nice eyes. He was now told that his eyes were lovely by a beautiful kunoichi. The last time he looked into the mirror, he was astounded by what he saw. Even though his eyes were still blue, they now had 4 silver stars that appeared to glow ethereally around the iris. He returned the mirror to Tenten, and as her hand touched his, he experienced the constriction in his chest once more. He smiled slightly at her, recalling what Sonosuke had said days before. You know what, Tenten? If that offer to teach me Kenjutsu still stands, I'll take you up on it. Tenten just gave a nod, but she was actually performing a victory dance. An opportunity to teach someone a new weapon while simultaneously admiring them. Life was good. The boy in front of Tenten was shirtless, had a body that most people would die for, and was swinging a huge hammer like it was a stick, making it difficult for her to stay focused. For what felt like the 100th time that morning, she let out a sigh. Naruto just couldn't seem to get the stances right, no matter how promising he was. He was just too much of a free form fighter, utilizing whatever was effective at the time. Naruto, stop, please just stop. Your form is horrible, you keep stepping out of the stances I show you, and for the love of Kami, don't just swing the hammer around. You have to use it like an extension of yourself. But Tenten, it is an extension of myself. It's connected to my soul. Can't get any more extensive than that. That's not the point, and you know it, Naruto. You have to listen to me if you want to do this right. Alright, let's try a different approach. I'm going to stand beside you and perform a kata, and I want you to mimic it perfectly. Anything less than perfection and we'll do it again and again until you have it right. Slave driver. You try having made a guy for a sensei and we'll see whether or not I'm being kind. Now do what I do, or else. Or else what? I don't know yet, but the general idea is you, me, and several pointy things aimed at sensitive parts. Now follow my lead. He imitated her as she moved into her stance and remained motionless. With a sweeping, crescent moon motion, she dipped the sword low and raised it again, and she caught a glimpse of him doing the same with the hammer. Good, that's a good start. Teaching him how to use the hammer so that it came naturally to him and that he wasn't so uncomfortable with it was the goal, not how to wield a sword. She sighed as she watched him falter at the last second out of what would have been a perfect kata. The day was going to be long. Before they knew it, lunchtime had arrived, and Naruto made the decision to give Tenten anything she desired. She decided to eat sushi at the priciest and newest sushi bar in town. Inwardly, Naruto cursed his chivalrous nature and the loss of Chan's swollen belly, but he went along with it so as not to appear like a cheap date. Naruto was to ramen what Tenten was to sushi. One of the best gluttons, capable of destroying wallets in one stop. With a defeated sigh, Naruto followed the obstinate girl with the bun hair inside, but the owner escorted him out, telling him to leave that behemoth of an elephant slayer outside. There were no issues there. After a shoulder twist, wrist flick, and loud boom, the offending object was in its own small crater and not bothering anyone. Ignoring the owner's gaping, he shrugged and went back to his table. At the moment, Tenten was having a great time. To keep her content, she had a very attractive blonde companion, delicious food, and a good drink. She kept getting jealous glances from some of the younger girls in the restaurant, which only made her smirk bigger and more pronounced. Even though Neji was attractive, he was too quiet and modest to have elicited this kind of response. On the other hand, Naruto attracted attention with his wild appearance, his gentlemanly treatment of Tenten, and his voice, which was softer than usual because of Sonosuke's trick. But what kept her most entertained was their conversation. Although she was aware that he was a demon container since they had saved Gaara, she was unaware of the boy's depth. So tell me, Naruto, what are you going to do with that hammer? I can't imagine you just coming across an enchanted weapon by accident. Well, first, it's a holy weapon, not an enchanted one. Second, I'll tell you later, once we leave here. Sigh, you're never going to believe me, Tenten. You're going to think I'm insane. You rushed Neji, a master of the Byakugan, head on, and you expect me to think you're not insane? Naruto, there aren't many things you could tell me that would make me think you're off your rocker. At that remark, Naruto smiled. If he had one flaw, good or bad, it was his need and aptitude for disproving others. Wanna bet? Tenten was, to put it mildly, stunned after hearing a long account of his apparent death, his encounter with Kami, the angel Sanosuke who brought his hammer, and his necessity of finding his soulmate in order to receive Kenjutsu instruction. This boy was absolutely crazy. No, he was absolutely crazy. It was unrealistic to expect anyone to believe everything he said, but Naruto was contradicting himself. He was one of the happiest, sweetest, and nicest people you could ever meet, despite having every reason to despise the world and want to murder everyone. No matter how hard you fought, you couldn't help but be lifted up by his spirit, and no matter how hard you tried, a smile could only appear on your face. She knew this from experience, having seen Neji try too often to keep his scowl but lose it. However, Naruto was straining her sanity and patience to the limit. She would have come to terms with the fact that he had discovered the hammer by chance and that it had just taken him as its master. That was fine. It was unacceptable to be told that you were Kami's right hand on earth. It was blasphemous. It was completely absurd to claim that your soulmate would teach you how to wield a hammer and sword. However, Naruto was a Jinchuriki, a human sacrifice, and the terrifying Kyuubi's prisoner. Maybe it wasn't so unrealistic to be Kami's personal shinobi after all. Naruto, do you really expect me to believe all that? Really and truly? Sigh, Tenten. I don't expect you to believe anything you don't want to believe. I want you to believe me, as my friend. It's not that far a stretch after all. Shinobi have near-death experiences all the time. I just happened to meet with the Kami. I'm a special case, you know. Look, if you don't believe me, I'll find someone else to teach me Kenjutsu. I don't want to bother you for a cause that seems unworthy. Tenten was more disturbed by that statement than she had anticipated. She had an unreasonable desire. No, a necessity, to lead him. Another thing that was unacceptable at this point was Naruto leaving her. Wait, let's not be hasty. It's not that I don't believe you, it's just a lot to take in. Give me a chance, please? Please? To ease the pain of the building headache, Naruto rubbed his temples and let out a sigh. He had the ideal idea while he was lost in thought, which was previously impossible. Tell you what. I'll have Sanosuke come again and you can talk to him yourself. Then you'll have to believe me. Naruto and Tenten were waiting for Sanosuke back at the training grounds. Tenten was still shaken by the fact that he stood while Naruto was meditating. Is it true that the man was as hyperactive as Lee, but he managed to remain motionless long enough to adopt a meditative posture? As if her day couldn't get any stranger, she believed she heard Naruto get up and mumble a farewell to someone. When he opened his eyes, she appeared to drown in the blue, with only the silver stars serving as buoys to help her navigate the ocean's depths. He snapped his fingers in front of her face, bringing her out of herself, induced coma and bringing her back to reality. He'll be here shortly. He seems to think a great deal of you for some reason. He does? Well, I hope I don't disappoint him. Trust me, young lady, you don't disappoint. In fact, you exceed my expectations. When the two teenagers turned, they saw the brown-haired man grinning at them with his hands behind his back. I'm here to answer any questions you might have. Now what do you want to know? Remember that all of this is between you, me, and Naruto. Tenten thought for a long moment before deciding on her question. Are you really an angel? Of course I am. How else could I have bestowed that gift upon Naruto earlier? I didn't see you bestow a gift. All I saw was his eyes change. That could be a very powerful, very suggestive genjutsu. With a sigh, Naruto attempted to dissect everything Sanosuke had said. He made the decision to stop it early. Tenten, it's not a genjutsu. You're good enough to dispel one if you sensed it. The praise made her blush a little, but she didn't waver. Right now, her analytical mind was racing. Prove to me that you're an angel. Do something angelic. Sanosuke looked at her doubtfully and arched an eyebrow. Like what, pray tell? I don't know. Part the waters, bring a dead person back to life, throw your voice, do something. Ninja can do all those things. It won't prove I'm an angel and you know that. Then tell me something only an angel would know. He leaned over and whispered in her ear while grinning. Whether it was embarrassment or anger, which Naruto couldn't tell, her eyes widened and her face grew redder until she finally lost it and gave Sanosuke a hard slap. But because he was an angel, he took the blow as it came and didn't move. He winked at Naruto, who was definitely not grinning at him, and grinned at a very red Tenten. Why is every man I encounter a complete pervert? What did you say to her? After giving Sanosuke a death glare for a moment, Tenten focused on Naruto. Never you mind what he said to me. I believe you, okay? He's an angel and you're the right hand of Kami. I believe you. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go home and relieve some anger on the training posts in my backyard. I'll see you here tomorrow at 7. But Tenten, there's still light out, and you can pound the posts here. Her eyes were burning as she abruptly turned around. I am going home. I am going to take out my frustration on my training posts. I am going to take a shower and then I am going to bed. Good night, Mr. Uzumaki. I shall see you in the morning. And as for you, you tell him what you said, an angel or not, you'll wish that you'd never been born. Maid. Fuck it. You'll pay. Then she was gone. Like a statue, Naruto stood motionless. Man, she's scarier than Sakura when she's pissed. I hope I can get along with her. I'm going to go back to training on that stance she taught me. I'll talk to you later, Sanosuke, and thanks for talking to her. Sanosuke crossed his arms in front of his chest and smiled. You don't want to know what I said to her? Come on, Naruto, show a sense of adventure. Live a little. Thanks, but I'd rather live a lot. I've seen what a pissed off Tenten can do to Lee, and I'm not going to have a kunai anywhere near my dangly parts. So just bugger off. Alright then, but you may want to ask her about that night when she... Naruto closed his eyes and inserted his fingers into his ears. La 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 la, I can't fucking hear you. When Tenten arrived home, she was in a rage. A very dirty and irate weapons mistress believed that a bath would help her relax and cool down after the training posts were soon reduced to nothing more than sawdust. The frown vanished from her face as soon as her muscles touched the water, and her lips moved slightly upward in its place. She simply rested her aching bones while leaning back. I questioned whether my departure today was too hurried. Even though the angel annoyed me, I didn't have to vent my anger on Naruto. Tomorrow, I'll have to apologize to him. I don't want to turn into another Sakura who constantly hits him and talks down to him without cause. She frowned at this thought. She didn't resemble Sakura at all. Tenten hung back and was unassuming, while the girl with the pink hair stood out in a crowd. Tenten was rather uninteresting in comparison to some other kunoichi. Just plain brown eyes and hair. She examined herself, looking down at her body. Her body was extremely slender, designed for flexibility rather than strength, allowing her to throw her weapons and take advantage of her innate feminine grace. Despite not being as large as the Hokage, she was not a slouch either, and she took pride in her physique. Thinking back to that morning, when she had gone to waken Naruto, she almost flushed. He had called her an angel while he was half asleep. She was beautiful, in his opinion. He could have profited from that remark, so it's a shame he probably forgot. She pictured his foxy grin and those eyes once more. Despite herself, she smiled. She wanted to rub his hair and stroke those whisker lines. That thought made her laugh. There was something about him that made her think of a fox kid, cute, cuddly, and trustworthy. The snicker turned to laughter. He would most likely follow her around like a lost puppy if she gave him a belly rub and got him a bowl of ramen. The thought of spending time with Naruto was starting to appeal to her more and more every second. It would never be dull, for sure. She dried off after getting out of the bath and walked slowly to her room, pausing before her mirror to admire her body in a new way. She paused when she pondered whether Naruto enjoyed girls like her. How could she possibly give a damn about what Uzumaki Naruto thought of her? Lunch at the sushi bar had demonstrated that he was a sweet guy, but he wasn't a suitable boyfriend. He could be just as annoying as Lee and Guy combined, if not more so, on a good day. With the genjutsu of the sunset, she became aware that these thoughts were keeping her from falling asleep. Tenten rolled over and fell asleep, growling and vowing to train Naruto into the ground the following day. Naruto stood and watched Tenten walk away hours before she went to sleep. In all his life, he had never been so interested in anyone and yet so terrified. He turned back, shaking his head, and lifted his hammer into the stance she had taught him. Sanosuke remained motionless, observing and waiting for someone to comment or assist him in changing his position. However, Naruto was going through the motions without any issues now that Tenten was not interfering with him. His hammer was on the ground in front of him, with his left hand by its side and the palm of his right hand resting on the handle. Naruto quickly caught the hammer after it whirled into the air with a quick tap of his left hand. He then twirled it around like a baton, striking it in a figure 8 motion before driving it head first into the ground while standing motionless. This caught Sanosuke off guard, and he expressed his astonishment. Oi, Naruto. When Tenten was here, you were tripping over your own feet and now you've got the move mostly down. Don't tell me you were distracted by her tomboyish charm. Naruto was polite enough to blush, but his remarks were abrasive and intense. "Shut up, it's not like that. I just calmed myself and remembered what she said, that's all. She's a really good teacher when she's not trying to kill you. Scary, yes, but a good teacher. I think I'll look forward to mastering everything she teaches me." He turned to glare at Sanosuke, who was grinning broadly, after hearing a snort from behind him. "You think just because you did it right once that you've got it mastered? Idiot, there's a reason she's known as the weapons mistress of Konoha. That girl is a master of nearly every weapon out there. You, on the other hand, are a clod who has mastered one stance of a kenjutsu style. You don't even know what moves can be used to follow that one up, and I'm not totally convinced that you're doing that wasn't a fluke." "It wasn't a fluke. I did that perfectly." "No, you didn't. You overextended your knee when you twirled the hammer on the 5th rotation. You could have pulled your arm out of socket as off balance as you were. But the hammer's so light, it's like spinning a baton. It's light because it's an extension of you. I can ask Cammy to make it heavier if you're going to be such a smartass." No, that's all right. I'm sorry. I'm just going to continue my training now. You can go now. "Tell me, Naruto, what are your plans for the future?" Naruto paused his task and rested his chin on his hands while placing both hands on the handle's end. He considered what he was going to say for a long time before responding. "I will do what Cammy needs me to do. Then I will live out the rest of my life for me and my soulmate. I have lived in the service of those who don't appreciate me for too long now. I promised Sakura that I would bring Sasuke back, and I intend to do that. And Uzumaki never breaks a promise. But you're the only Uzumaki, Naruto. Then that means that my children will carry my words into the future. It will be a matter of family honor that an Uzumaki never breaks his word." Sanosuke used this opportunity to impart a pearl of wisdom to Naruto, which he would consider for years to come. "Naruto, you've heard the stories about a demon and promises, right?" "Yeah, so? Naruto, your need to fulfill promises comes from the demon inside of you. It is one of the few noble traits he had. But whereas you will announce a promise and carry it out till the end, the Kyuubi never gave its word unless it could twist it to its advantage. That is why a demon will never promise anything unless it can get something out of it from the person it promised it to. But I never expected anything from Sakura." "Yes, you did. Subconsciously you craved her love and attention. You wanted to bring Sasuke back out of the premise that she would love you. You made the promise on the thought that you would get something out of it. That's just the demon's nature in you. Sorry you had to hear it from me, but that's the way it is. If that's true, that I expect to get things for doing things, then what am I supposed to do for Tenten for these lessons?" Before taunting Naruto and vanishing, Sanosuke laughed and his smile threatened to split his face. "Now that Mboy is part of the riddle, you've got to figure that out on your own." As Naruto pounded into the earth with his hammer, creating craters and cursing all the while, people within a quarter-mile radius of the training grounds felt the effects. Angels were really annoying. Naruto's training schedule caused him to arrive home a little later than normal. To make that one stance into an art form, he had employed the cage bunshin technique. He was pleased with his achievement as the hammer moved smoothly in his hands, until he recalled Sanosuke's remarks regarding pride in a single technique. A good ninja is not made of one technique, he reflected. He walked to his apartment, thumping the hammer down hard outside the stairwell. He struggled for a while with his keys before he finally got inside. For some reason, being at home made him feel even more alone than usual, rather than better. Something was bothering him, but he couldn't figure it out. It was as if a part of him had vanished, and he missed the company of someone else. Confused, he got a bowl of cup ramen out of the cupboard and heated some water. He stuffed the noodles into his mouth and tried to think of solutions, but he was unable to come up with any. He remembered what Sanosuke had said before he vanished and couldn't make sense of it either. Perhaps it's another of Sanosuke's tests. What was he supposed to give Tenten in exchange for her assistance if a promise was meant to bring him something? With a fierce growl, he threw the cup in the garbage and strode off to bed. In the morning, he would figure it out. When morning finally arrived, Naruto was back at the training grounds, awaiting Tenten's arrival. He frequently arrived first for events, but he assumed that since Maida Guy was a sensei, she would have at least arrived at the same time. He decided to make the most of his time, so he practiced the stance and performed a few cage bunshins. It was an extremely fascinating sight as they all moved in unison. With the exception of the dancers' large-ass hammers, it was similar to watching a professional dance company. When she arrived, she saw not one, but 5 Narutos, all with hammers, performing the stance she taught him flawlessly, suggesting that Tenten had a talent for showing up to see things that caught her attention. She stood behind a tree and watched, spellbound. Tenten had believed she had seen everything. She has battled a number of superpowered opponents, trained with a haughty Hyuga, and dealt with 2 masochistic workaholics. She shouldn't be startled or stopped in her tracks by anything anymore. But there she was, like a certain Hyuga girl, standing behind a tree, watching 5 Narutos execute the stance she taught in perfect unison. When they were done, 4 of them vanished and the ground trembled from the hammers falling, leaving only the original Naruto, who sat down next to his hammer and leaned against it angrily. Then he called out to the wind. "Man, where the hell is she? I thought at least Guy would have taught her punctuality. Just because she's a girl doesn't mean she can come and go as she pleases." Tenten had been observing him with admiration. She was eager for lunch again so she could receive the jealous looks from other girls, and he was definitely a catch. But he wouldn't get away with indirectly insulting her like that. She disguised herself and started to creep up behind him, using her meager genjutsu skills. After just a few minutes, she was standing directly behind him, kunai drawn, and prepared to pull her prank. When he started sniffing the air like an Inuzuka, she started to worry, but he calmed down and she set up her trap. She dispelled the genjutsu by placing her arms around his shoulders, leaning on his back, and pressing the kunai against his tender spot. His spine tingled when she whispered in his ear, but he did his best to remain composed. "You know, Naruto, you shouldn't talk to yourself when no one's around. Someone might hear what you say and do what I could do right now. Now then, let's see how high-pitched your voice can get." She was thrown into the air with all of her limbs spread wide before she could even move. She turned her head back and forth and discovered that Naruto clones were holding her arms and legs. The original Naruto was spinning her kunai on the tip of his finger when she glanced over her stomach. "Naruto, let me down. This isn't funny." "You're right, Tenten, it wasn't funny. You threatened to lop off my little buddy and that wasn't funny. Tickling the shit out of you as punishment, however, that's going to be funny. You wouldn't dare. Watch me." She suppressed her laughter when he prodded her in the stomach, but she lost it when he started tickling her all over, causing her to writhe and gasp for air. Although she secretly enjoyed herself, she detested being helpless against something so trivial. It had been a while since she had enjoyed herself so much. At last, Naruto paused his assistance to allow her to catch her breath before assisting her in standing up. She made an effort to glare at him, but her smile persisted. "Okay, asshole. Just for that I'm showing you 2 additional stances today and I expect you to be able to do them flawlessly before lunch, which, I might add, you are treating me to yet again. That's not fair. I treated you yesterday. Why don't you pay for yourself?" "Because you're supposed to be a gentleman and I am a lady." That was debatable, Naruto muttered under his breath, earning himself a head knock that sent him crashing to the ground. Fortunately for Tenten, he missed the smile on her face. "Now then, you're going to pay for my lunch and that's that. Besides, only a few people have ever touched me outside of battle and lived. You should feel honored I haven't gutted you like a fish yet. Now get that overgrown mallet of yours and we'll get started." "It's not a mallet, it's a hammer. It's going to be shoved up your ass sideways if you don't do as I say. Now get cracking." "Bah, you can't even lift it to go through with that threat." "Maybe, but I can shove this katana sideways. Now move." "Eep. Yes ma'am." Unbeknownst to them, Sanosuke was sitting in a tree nearby, amusedly observing them. When he saw what Naruto was going through right now, he felt sorry for the boy and had to fight the urge to laugh at their antics. Tenten was a slave driver, it was true. Even though they aren't aware of it yet, he thought, ought to be young again and in love. Tenten leaned her katana against her shoulder and sat on the ground, panting. With a frustrated sigh, she glanced at her current partner across the training grounds. After just a few attempts, and a few clubs upside her head, he had mastered the katas, and the little punk was still going strong as if he hadn't even been tired. With a sigh, she reclined on the floor. Why was Naruto, who trained with one of the most indolent Junin in the world, such a fucking stamina freak after years of training with Guy, Sensei and Lee? By this point, even Lee would have fainted from exhaustion, mumbling to himself about the flames of youth while sleeping. She could feel the hammer hitting the floor, and when she looked up, she saw Naruto approaching. The boy's physique was a constant source of Tenten's admiration. He didn't have the physique of a genius, but he wasn't as toned as Lee. Naruto was an excellent middle ground between the two. He had the slight outline of a six-pack, but he wasn't solely dependent on power or jutsu. Tenten found him even more alluring because he was shirtless, claiming he didn't want to ruin his GI, and had perspiration dripping off his body. A diligent man was always appreciated by her. Perhaps this is the reason she stopped viewing Neji romantically some time ago. He just didn't put in the same amount of effort as Lee or her. Although he trained, he didn't continue until he was completely worn out. With fatigue, she glanced up at the blonde and noticed his lips moving. When she realized she had been ogling his body rather than listening to him, she flushed. Fortunately for her, the fool failed to notice. Go get something to eat? Hey Tenten, I asked if you want to get something to eat? Yeah, that sounds great. Where are we going? I don't know. You're the guest, you decide, as long as it's not sushi again. Ah, spoil sport. Fine, let's see. No, maybe. Ah, I got it. Let's go to that barbecue joint that Choji frequents. What if Choji's there? You know they shut down when he comes in. Tenten simply shrugged and got to his feet. Then we'll readjust our plans. Now let's go. After taking 2 steps, she collapsed on her face. She was unaware that teaching Naruto and assisting him with his forms had consumed the majority of her energy. It was more difficult than he thought to dodge the damn hammer once he had a vague idea of what to do with it. Meanwhile, Naruto was panicking about what to do. Tenten. Are you okay? I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to make you train me till you killed yourself. Please, come on, get up. Naruto, shut up. I'm not dead you idiot, I'm exhausted. You wore me out. Guess we won't be going to lunch. With a broad smile, Naruto swung his hammer to his back. He persuaded Sanosuke to create a holder for him that would be able to withstand the strain of carrying the hammer on his back after much urging. After giving him a curious glance, Tenten was abruptly lifted up bridal style and positioned against his chest. With a soft knock on his skull and a quick eep from her, she looked up to see those silver stars once more. I'm not passing up lunch because you can't walk. I'll carry you there. We'll probably make better time with me carrying you than normal anyway. You saying I'm slow? No, I'm saying you're slower than me. Now shut up and enjoy the ride. Naruto started to run as quickly as he could. Tenten chose to savor the ride and wrapped her arms around his neck. She buried her nose in his chest and breathed in his scent after he had put his GI back on. It had a distinct scent from all the other guys. In addition to the scent of ramen and the forest, there was an undercurrent of danger and protectiveness. She quickly found herself seated in a chair at the barbecue joint after finding it to be intoxicating. She thought she might be able to persuade him to carry her again on the way back, but the ride went by too quickly. She rarely had the opportunity to act like a girl rather than a warrior, and she preferred the attention he showed her. She gave him an order after he briefly left to take his hammer outside. This is something I could really get used to. Naruto was experiencing a range of emotions as he carried her. Having her in his arms felt right and comfortable, as if she had been there all along. The tightening of the chest had returned. He saw that she was not at all a burden to him and that her body almost perfectly fit his. He had leaned slightly and sniffed her hair when she wasn't looking. Her face was buried in his chest. It had a 10/10 scent. The only way he could describe it was that she had a distinct scent that no one else possessed. He found it pleasing and consoling. Additionally, he didn't like how short the run was, so he quickly found himself putting his hammer outside and lowering her into a chair. On the way back in, he let out a sigh. Why couldn't Tenten make all of his training sessions as pleasant as these? They kept themselves busy with small talk until their food arrived, and although their minds were racing, the 2 teenagers ate in silence. Slowly but surely, they were growing more at ease with each other. It's been said that when you can stop talking and enjoy cozy silence with each other, you found someone special. But it's clear that the person who made that statement had never met Naruto. He's not able to keep his mouth shut for very long. So Tenten, what's the deal with you and Neji? Did the 2 of you ever hook up? Tenten was a little surprised by this. It was a very direct question and quite abrupt. Like Naruto, she reflected. There's nothing between us, Naruto. Neji and I are just 2 different people and it wouldn't have worked. Even now that he's a better person and not so cold, he's still a pompous jackass on occasion. I gave up on him long ago. I'm sorry to hear that. What about Lee and Guy? How have they been? When asked about her sensei and favorite teammate, Tenten grinned. Guy. Sensei is all right. He's still as crazy as ever, but he's a good man at heart. Lee is your eternal rival Naruto. You should know how he is. Hee. Well, that's true. I haven't seen Lee lately though, since every time I come off a mission, I'm right back out in a few days. I've been focusing all my energy on getting Sasuke back, but I'm starting to rethink my actions on that. At that, Tenten arched an eyebrow. Naruto has only discussed saving Sasuke since he betrayed his country. He was now claiming to be reassessing that circumstance. Will there always be wonders? So what are you rethinking, Naruto? The approach to rescuing him or whether or not he wants to be rescues? Rescuing him at all. That was quite unexpected. Naruto was obsessed with Sasuke, and it would be like moving a mountain to reconsider anything about him. Tenten gave a thoughtful and perceptive response. Do what? I'm not worried about rescuing him anymore. If I bring him back, if I see him again, he's a dead man. I'll kill him, Tenten. I really will. He'll get no mercy from me. He'll get my pity, yes, but never my mercy. Not anymore. But Naruto, Sasuke was like a brother to you. You've said so yourself. How can you kill him? Because there comes a time when even brotherhood cannot stand in the way of ideals. Sasuke chose to break the ideals of the village in exchange for power. Power he could have gotten here. We're on opposite sides of a war now, and whatever brotherly feelings I might have shared with him are gone now. But what about your promise to Sakura? Tenten was a little alarmed when Naruto's slow smile turned into a more maniacal one. That's the beauty of promises, Tenten. I only promised to bring Sasuke back to her. I never promised to bring him back alive. Besides that, I have to retrieve a tainted soul for Kami, and after that weird dream I had the other night, I have a certain idea of who it is. What dream are you talking about, Naruto? In the dream, he described to her how he saw Sasuke and the strange figure that must have been Orochimaru standing in his shadow. The more Tenten explained it in detail, the wider his eyes grew. So you're really going to kill him? That's very, well, frankly it's disturbing, Naruto. We all grew up with Sasuke. You were part of the Rookie 9 with him. How can you grow up with someone and then want to kill them? For a brief moment, Tenten saw Naruto differently as his face darkened. At 16, he had witnessed more deaths than he would have liked, experienced more betrayals than anyone else, and had had his heart broken by people he cared about on a regular basis. She briefly perceived him as the angel of death. Then he started talking. Tell me, Tenten, what do we do with ninja who leave the village without permission? We brand them nuke.nin and send out the hunter.nin. Sasuke is a traitor and traitors deserve death. Plain and simple. No strings attached. That's brutal, Naruto. But I also have to admit that it's very true. Sasuke shouldn't get preferential treatment because of who he is. But how are you going to explain this to Sakura? I'm not. She'll either accept it or she won't. Not my problem. Sakura is my teammate, but I can't let that get in the way of justice. As Tenten glanced around the restaurant, she saw that many people had stopped eating and were paying close attention to what she and Naruto were saying. Naruto saw that she was shifting uneasily in her chair. He also looked around and concluded that it was time to shift the topic to more comfortable areas. He strode across the room, picked up Tenten once more, paid the bill, and went out. When he picked her up, she turned red, but she didn't resist. He simply instructed her to hold onto his neck while he moved an arm beneath her butt, and they took off, without even swinging his hammer to his back. Naruto sat in front of Tenten, leaning against his hammer, while she was seated against a tree back at the training grounds. They were trying to restart the conversation because the atmosphere in the restaurant had been somewhat destroyed. Desperate to break the silence, Tenten simply blurted out the first thing that came to mind. Why did you make that promise to Sakura? Naruto appeared to vanish into himself as she watched, but his eyes stayed open and the stars in them took on an ethereal glow. He gave her a little smile as the light returned to his eyes just as she was shaking him to check if he had fallen asleep. Tenten, I made that promise because I wanted her to be happy. Or at least that's why I thought I made it. Sanosuke told me earlier that my need to fulfill promises comes from the demon in me, that it was one of his noble traits. All these years, I thought it was me just being a nice guy, and here I find it's the demon influencing me. But it's a noble trait, right? So why is something noble bad? Sasuke's Avenger thing is supposed to be noble. Seppuku is supposed to be noble. Making promises with the intent that you get something out of it isn't noble. I don't consider any of the other noble reasons all that noble either. But Naruto, you've never been malicious about anything, and I've heard you make promises before. You never ask for anything out of them. You make them because you're a good person and you want people to be happy. Besides, I happen to like that quality about you. You're an honest person. Tenten was thinking to herself as Naruto gaped at her. Given that she could barely claim to know Naruto, she questioned why she had said that. However, there was a hidden desire to get to know him. It's illogical to want to know him. She was liking what she saw and was beginning to see the boy in a completely different light. Naruto's little voice jolted her out of her reverie. Do you really mean that, Tenten? I've never had anyone say that to me before. Of course I meant it. It's one of your endearing qualities, Naruto. I think my strength is back now. We can continue this conversation later. Let's get back to training. By the end of the day, Naruto had mastered a whole style and only needed to practice it with Tenten's assistance and a ton of cage bunshin. Tenten was amazed by the boy's capacity for learning once more. He agreed when she asked him to teach her the cage bunshin, but she was only able to make 2 at a time. She was on the verge of pouting when Lee appeared over the horizon, waving wildly. Ten, we must go to meet Guy. Sensei. He has got an USA mission to protect a nobleman and has said it will improve our flames of youth tenfold. Oh hello, Naruto. How have you been? Pretty good, Lee. Next time I see you I expect a spar, okay? Yash Naruto. I will most definitely find you when we return for our spar. Train my friends so that our flames of youth will burn brightly. Sure thing, Lee. Tenten, thanks for all your help. I'll continue training in this style until I have it mastered. I guess I'll see you later, take care. Assuming that his training with Tenten was over, Naruto started to leave, his hammer resting on his shoulder. The thought made him very sad, but he was unable to understand why. With the same sensation coursing through her, Tenten watched his back before yelling his name, forcing him to stop, and jogging toward him. Look, Naruto, I enjoyed myself these past couple of days. I really did. When I get back, if you're here, would you like to continue our training? Really? You mean it? Hell yeah, I want to continue this? Good. Good. I want you to continue working that style, got it? Oh, and Naruto? Yeah, I want you to promise me something. Naruto gave her a wide-eyed stare. Hadn't they just discussed him and promises? Before he could delve any further into his thoughts, she was at his side, grinning broadly and whispering in his ear. I want you to promise me that when I get back, you'll take me on a date. A real date. No ramen, no training clothes, just you, me, and a nice restaurant. What do you say? Would you like that? With wide eyes, Naruto simply nodded stupidly. Unable to hear the conversation, Lee watched with interest. He was startled when Tenten bent over and gave Naruto a cheek kiss, making the boy flush. Then, she sprang forward and seized Lee's arm, dragging him along in disbelief and bewilderment. Tenten had never been so direct with a boy before, and Lee's mind was racing to figure out what that meant. But Lee was a naive, innocent man who simply couldn't understand any logic. Lee's lack of manners was almost as bad as Naruto's, if not worse. But Tenten didn't respond, so they continued on with their mission. To put it mildly, Naruto was taken aback. His attractive trainer had recently asked him out on a date, was more patient with him than anyone since Iruka, and was eager to show him things. It was his first time going on a date. On dates, what did people do? He would need to inquire with Iruka about that. He might as well return to learning her style in the interim. 100 cage bunchins were created by him, and they all went to work. Later tonight, he would consider this. Sanosuke sat in a tree and heard and saw everything without realizing it. He vanished silently and resurfaced in Tenten's living room. He stomped on the floor to alert her to his presence after hearing her packing. She responded by hurtling 2 kunai, which became stuck in his chest. With a scowl, he withdrew the kunai and gave them to a Tenten who was a little irate. He fingered the holes in his robe once more and rubbed his chest. You know, Naruto put these exact same holes in my shirt that you did. You two definitely are two of a kind. So, did you figure out the riddle? I did. I'm not sure that Naruto has. After he told me that story, especially the part about his soulmate teaching him kenjutsu, I pieced it together. When he explained the dream, I knew it was me. Tell me, Sanosuke, how can he be that dense about things? Is he really that dumb? It's not that he's dumb, Tenten. He just believes, deep down, that he doesn't deserve such a thing as love. Not from a girl and not in the sense of a lover. His sense of self-worth is very low from earlier in his life. But you can change all that. You can be what he's always needed. Tenten absorbed all of this as she carried on packing. What do you think about his view on Sasuke? Is he right, Sanosuke? Are there some souls that are too far gone as to not be worth saving? No souls are always worth saving. But there are still rules that mortals must follow so that there will be no blemishes on their souls. Loyalty, honor, respect, trust, love. These are things that must be followed. If someone is your master, you must do as they say, without question. To go against your master, unless with due cause, shows that you have none of the noble qualities and therefore you forfeit your right to have a say whether you live or die. Sasuke is not the soul Naruto must purge, but he may be caught in the crossfire. It is inevitable. Orochimaru. Tenten thought. So what can we do to ensure that Naruto doesn't kill Sasuke if he's innocent? Tenten briefly thought of Naruto as Sanosuke's face darkened. Sasuke is not innocent. He chose to go and follow a darker path for power. Avenging your family at the cost of your own life is not something that is noble. It is foolhardy. Naruto is correct. Sasuke cannot be forgiven for his crimes. It is a shame that one such as Naruto may have to stain his hands with the blood of one he considered friend, but in the shinobi world, such things must come to pass. What is my role in all this? Whatever you choose, Tenten. Your role is what you make of it. Unlike your friend Neji thinks, there is no such thing as fate. It is a crutch that the weak hide behind when they cannot change anything. All I ask is that you be yourself and try to help him. Tenten smiled at Sanosuke as he turned around. I'll do one better. No matter what life brings at us, I'll stand by him. I'm going to make him work for me. I won't just stand by him because we are bound at the soul. That's why I told him we're going on a date, because I don't want him to think I'm just going to be with him because Cammy said so. He wants me. He has to show me he wants me. I think Cammy will like you, Tenten. I know I do. Make Naruto sweat a little bit before the two of you get serious. You'll appreciate it more later in life. Her smile changed to a savage one. Who says I'm going to make him stop sweating ever? I like the little dunce, but if he's going to be with me forever, I want him on his toes all the time. I don't want a boring soulmate. I want him to challenge me as well. And with Naruto and that mouth of his, I know I'll never be bored and I'll never have to worry about being cheated on because he's so fiercely loyal. TCH, listen to me, I'm starting to sound like he's caught me already. More than you'll ever realize, Sanosuke pondered. Aw crap, I'm gonna be late. Bye Sanosuke. Tell Cammy I said hi. Sanosuke vanished and she was out the door in an instant. He knelt down and appeared in front of Cammy. So what do you think of her, Cammy? Sama, she is an interesting girl. She'll definitely keep that knucklehead in line. And when they both come here, I'll have two fine angels to serve me, as you have. Do you think Naruto will be alright with his path? Will it darken his soul? Cammy looked around, staring at Sanosuke. She rarely paid attention to just one thing at a time, but now she was totally focused on him. I think he will do what is right. He will do what I asked, nothing more. Naruto is not a vengeful person, but he does know right and wrong. He will be fine. His village will accept him for who he is, and when he receives his final gift, it will make him all the more loved. Was it wise to have me tell him about the demon like that? It served its purpose. It made him stop and think about that ridiculous promise he made to Haruno Sakura all those years ago. A promise is fine, but one shouldn't have to be killed over something so childish. Mortals all make their own path in life. Naruto has chosen a path of light. Sasuke chose one of darkness. The two must combat each other to see which prevails, and in the end, we will see who had the most conviction. My soldier or the Tainted One's vessel. During Tenten's absence, Naruto spent the entire week training and meditating. He made no attempt to locate Kakashi or seek out Sakura. This unsettling absence of frequent irritation is what prompted the two to search the entire village for the blonde. They discovered him at their usual training area, rearranging the terrain in the dance of the swirling pool, the style Tenten had finally taught him. Because it made extensive use of downward strikes and misdirection, it was a good fit for Naruto's hammer. Before turning on his heel and slapping the hammer up and down in a crescent moon motion, he used the spike to make his fictitious opponent jump back and twirl the huge piece of metal around his body, pushing it forward. After a figure 8 spin, he brought the hammer back down and dropped it in front of him, both hands on the handle's end. While their teammate danced without noticing them, Sakura and Kakashi stood transfixed. The first to awaken from her daze, Sakura strode forward to catch his eye. She found herself facing the business end of his hammer when she tapped him on the shoulder. Anger swiftly overcame her fear as she reacted as she always did. You idiot! Watch where the hell you're pointing that overgrown mallet. She stumbled and almost fell when she tried to punch him in the head, but all she struck was nothing. He was standing sideways on a nearby tree with his hammer on his shoulder when she looked around. Nay, that wasn't nice, Sakura-chan. You shouldn't sneak up on people and then accuse them of things. I'll do more than accuse you, you idiot. I heard from Tsunade. She showed that you found a new toy. Kakashi. Sensei, and I came to see what it was. Where did you get that? Cammy. That caused Sakura and Kakashi to halt. There was a pause, and then Sakura started laughing, and Kakashi's eye wrinkled into a smile. The unreadable expression on Naruto's face, however, was the same as it had been since they had arrived. Kakashi made the decision that he desired a genuine response. Okay Naruto, where did you really get it? Cammy. Cammy gave it to me. It's a holy hammer. Only I can wield it. Sakura snorted and he heard it. That infuriated him more than usual for some reason. When he told her, Tenten hadn't laughed. With a frown, he extended the hammer. Okay then Miss Medic.nin. You're the stronger of the two of us, correct? Then lift up this hammer from the ground. Use whatever means necessary and then I'll show you up by lifting it with one hand. Their eyes widened as he dropped the hammer, which landed with a loud boom. Sakura smirked as she reached for the hammer after glancing back and forth between Naruto and the weapon. She tried pulling, tugging, swearing, screaming, and pumping chakra into her arms, but it wouldn't move. She folded her arms across her chest and sighed in frustration. Think you're so smart, huh? Smirking like you can take on the world. Why don't you lift the damn thing then? Sakura, you've seen me lift it. You saw me use it. I don't need to prove anything. but if you insist. He was about to pick up his hammer when Kakashi appeared and threw a kunai at his head. Dropping his hammer to the ground, Naruto used his right palm to manipulate the handle and block the kunai. Upon hearing the clang, Kakashi hurried him, and his eyes widened when Naruto chose to remain composed and analyze the situation rather than enter blindly. When Kakashi had 6 paces, he used his left hand to tap the side of the hammer and turn it around, slashing at Kakashi, who ducked with a backflip. Kakashi reassessed the situation and observed Naruto standing poised, his right arm extended, palm open, his hammer tightly grasped behind him, and his left foot in front. There was no doubt that the boy had improved. His position was firm, and Kakashi would have assumed that Naruto had become smarter if he hadn't known any better. More haptic? It might have been his demeanor alone. It irritated me. He was guarded now, and that stance left too much up to the imagination, whereas normally he could read Naruto like an open book. He lifted his Hite-8, revealing the Sharingan, because he didn't want to take any chances. He was surprised that Naruto didn't recoil. The boy seemed to possess experience that was beyond his years. Tell me, Kakashi Sensei, who besides Guy, has the most experience dealing with the Sharingan? This surprised Kakashi, but he quickly collected himself. His subordinates shouldn't believe that they can easily surprise him. I don't know, Naruto. Why don't you enlighten me? It's me, Kakashi Sensei. I have the most experience in fighting the Sharingan, and I can tell you right now that that eye of yours is no match for my stamina or strength. I'm tired of being pushed around and I have the resolve to go through with what I must do. And what is that, Naruto? Bring back Sasuke. Sakura and Kakashi nodded their heads and grinned before he continued. Dead or alive? Even though her mission had been successful, Tenten was eager to see Naruto again after her recent return. She was eager for her date and eager to train with him once more. However, she was not prepared to see Kakashi with his headband up and his Sharingan spinning angrily, nor was she ready to see a very red-faced Sakura yelling at a stoic Naruto. She hid behind a tree and listened to the argument that ensued, suppressing her chakra because she believed that discretion was more important than bravery. What the hell do you mean, dead or alive, Naruto? Sasuke has to come back alive. You promised me that we'd bring him back. I promised you that I'd bring him back, Sakura. I never agreed to help you bring him back, and I never promised to bring him back alive. I've made a decision that I will no longer actively seek Sasuke. If I come across him, all the better, but I have other things that require my attention, more important things. What could be more important than getting our friend back, Naruto? Divine justice. My work as the right hand of Kami. Sakura fixed her jaw after staring at him incredulously. Listen to you, Naruto. You sound like a self-important jackass. Divine justice? Right hand of Kami? For Kami's sake, Naruto, you sound like Sasuke. You sound like Sasuke, Naruto. That's not you. Don't presume to know me, Kakashi. You might be my sensei, but that is in word only. You have never been a sensei to me. Your pet project ran off and you gave him the tools to do it. Now it's my job to pick up the mess. I have a task given to me by Kami, and if Sasuke happens to get in my way, I will not hesitate to take him down. I'm tired of having to heal Chidori holes in my chest. This isn't right, Naruto. You can't go back on a promise. You're right, Sakura. I can't go back on a promise. That's my way. But other people seem to have no problem breaking promises to me, so I shall no longer give my word to those who I deem unfit to have it. Abruptly, he raised his nose and took a whiff of the air. He smiled because he recognized the scent. He bowed curtly to his teammates, who were still in shock. If you'll excuse me, my Kenjutsu trainer is here again and I must get back to training. I have much to learn from her, and the more I dally, the more upset she will be. Good day. Kakashi pulled his headband back over his eye as they watched him leave into the forest. Kakashi Sensei, when did Naruto get such an extensive vocabulary? And why is he acting like this? I believe that something happened to him between our last mission and his awakening, Sakura. Perhaps he had an epiphany. After all, every time we meet Sasuke, he tries to kill Naruto. I know, but that's because he's messed up because of the cursed seal. He can't help it. Maybe. Or maybe Naruto doesn't believe that anymore. I think we should drop the subject around him for the time being. Let's go. I think we should talk to Hokage Sama about this. Tenten was pleased with Naruto's self-control. Despite her strong desire to tear their heads off, he had maintained his composure, not lost his temper, and not lost his cool. She took hold of his arm as he passed her, and he smiled slightly. Hello, Tenten. How was your mission? It was alright. We got back in record time. I saw that little exchange, by the way. I'm sorry you had to see that. I hope you aren't upset with me. Why would I be upset with you? I agree with you. Well, that's unexpected. Looks like there are a lot of them today, Naruto thought. So Naruto, are you ready for our date? Yeah, about that. I've never been on a date before. What do we do? You've never been on a date before? Geez Naruto, what have you been doing all your life? Tenten, I don't mean to spoil your teasing, but think for a second who you're talking to. Who would date me knowing what I am? After giving this some thought, she concluded that it made sense. Who, after all, would date the Kyuubi holder? She made her move with a wry smile on her face. I would. He simply stared at her blankly. Really? You mean it? Of course I mean it. Why do you think I asked you in the first place? I don't know. Sigh, because I like you. You're a funny guy. You're interesting. And you're cute to boot. I get a lot of jealous looks when I'm with you. With his mind overloaded, Naruto simply stood there. Now then, go home and get ready. Dress nice and come prepared to knock my socks off. Think casual, but formal. Show me a good time. Make me feel special. I'll help you along, but it's up to you to make me feel like I don't want the night to end. Now get going. Naruto simply gave a stupid nod and left, dragging his hammer in his wake. After giggling, Tenten hurried to her apartment to prepare herself. Tonight, she wanted to look stunning. We'll both be drawing attention if everything goes according to plan. Tonight is going to be ideal, hee. Naruto pondered what to do on a date as he walked slowly down the street to his apartment. Although he had asked Sakura out on numerous occasions, he had never given any thought to what he would do on a date. Not that it was all his fault, but he wasn't exactly a social butterfly. He was clueless about what to do. His only option was to speak with Iruka and hope his old sensei could offer some helpful guidance. He took the hammer and headed out to find Iruka, nodding silently in agreement. Iruka was sitting in his home, reading a book while dozing off on the couch. He wanted to spend the day alone since it was one of his few days off. To discourage any potential guests, he had erected barriers around his home and even set up traps. However, he had forgotten that Naruto's superior luck, combined with his unbeatable bullheadedness and stupidity, was enough to destroy everything he owned. He moaned when he heard his favorite student's screams of rage and the roar of profanity, and his eyes snapped open at the first boom of an exploding note. Okay, that wasn't good. I just need to avoid any more. Oh come on. What the fuck is? Aw man, I really like this shirt, goddammit. I'm going to kill Iruka Sensei when I find him. Iruka let out a loud sigh and stood up to let the boy with the golden hair in. The sight of Naruto, who had lost his shirt in the explosion, smoldering and his slightly burned hair already growing back in, made him stifle a chuckle. When Naruto put the hammer down with a loud thump and pushed past the scarred man to wipe the soot off his face, Iruka finally noticed it after taking in the boy. Iruka snorted at Naruto's behavior, which caused the Jinchuriki to growl. Naruto had not intended to be subjected to Iruka's explosive notes. He had only intended to come and ask a few straightforward questions. The thought of having to pick up Tenten for dinner later was the only thing keeping him from throwing a full-blown fit. His otherwise pleasant mood had soured. He had no time to waste on unimportant things. He coughed into his hand as he turned back to his former sensei after cleaning up. I'm sorry for interrupting whatever you were doing Iruka Sensei, but I need a bit of advice and I couldn't think of anyone but you to come to. When Iruka heard that, he smiled. His ability to genuinely assist Naruto was becoming increasingly rare, so this was a truly unique treat. The boy's crash on his off-day was nearly worth it. Oh really? Well, I'll do my best to help any way I can. What did you need from me? Advice on dating. Iruka would have appeared even more stunned if he could have. You want advice on dating? Oh ho, finally got Sakura to break down huh? No, it isn't Sakura. Hinata then? She always had a thing for you I believe. No it isn't Hinata. And she had a thing for me. Huh, I never knew, but no, not Hinata either. Ino? Hell no she's way too bossy. And Sakura wasn't. Well that's pretty much the gamut of your classmates I know Naruto. You never had much interaction with the other girls of the class. It's not one of my classmates. Oh, then who is she? An underclassman? Naruto rolled his eyes and let out a sigh. 20 questions was more than he could handle. It's Tenten Iruka Sensei. I have a date with Tenten. Tenten? The weapons-obsessed girl? With buns in her hair? That's the one. How in the hell did you end up with her? With a smile, Naruto shrugged. Ask and Kami shall provide. Iruka sagged his shoulders and sighed. Although dealing with Naruto was never dull, he always questioned whether it was worthwhile in the end. I don't want to know, and out of curiosity, where in the hell did you get that hammer? Kami provided it. Okay, How about those stars in your eyes? Kami provided it. Right. Gotcha. Look, Naruto, if you don't want to tell me the truth, just say you don't want to tell me, okay? But I am telling you the truth. Look, sensei, I have to go get ready, but I promise I'll tell you all about how I got everything later, I promise. Fine. I'll see you later then. Oh, and watch out for the other traps. He responded with a scream of rage and another boom, which made him smile before he lay down again. He laughed and thought, with Naruto around, it's never boring. Despite the uncomfortable looks he received from the village girls, Naruto eventually made it home safely. They appeared to have never seen a man without a shirt before. Since he didn't consider himself exceptional, he found it difficult to accept that he had become rather attractive over time. Iruka didn't really offer him any advice, so he entered the house and started getting ready for his date, wondering how in the world he was going to manage it. Naruto quickly left because he was tired of all the questions. He was accustomed to making things up as he went along, so why should this time be any different? He left his hammer on the sidewalk outside and completed putting on the one semi-formal outfit Sanosuke had given him. Tonight, he wouldn't need it. Tenten was frantically trying to decide what to wear. She was different from most girls who dress nicely in kimonos. Tenten took great care to maintain her Chinese-inspired appearance because she liked it. She avoided wearing makeup, claiming it was too much trouble most of the time, and her hair was always pulled up in buns. She never did more than apply lipstick. She pulled out the big gun because she thought her Chinese shirt and pants wouldn't work tonight. Her go-to weapon was a green Chinese dress with gold trim and a high side slit. Nothing would cause the little dunce to react if this didn't. As soon as she heard the knock, she rushed to open the door. She had no doubts about whether or not she wanted to be seen with him after seeing what was in front of her. Naruto wasn't used to dressing up in a typical way. You could even say that he detested it. He simply didn't feel at ease in anything other than his training attire. He would, however, make an exception for Tenten tonight. She had tolerated him patiently and had been nice enough to train him. She was also a certified bombshell, and he couldn't deny her ability to be deadly gorgeous. She was as near to perfection as he could find, even though he didn't admit it yet. Soon, but not yet. He almost stepped on her when she opened the door because of this. There was a Chinese-dressed goddess in front of him. She was sexy in every way, and Naruto was paying close attention. Meanwhile, Tenten's eyes were consuming the young man before her. She didn't think he would take her advice to heart when she told him to think formal but casual. He looked extremely attractive in a black silk shirt with Tsunade's necklace on the outside, brown leather shoes, and khaki pants. In her mind, she laughed evilly. Yes, she would be the envy of many women tonight. She gave him a final approving glance, then beckoned him inside and led him to the couch while she went upstairs to make a few last-minute adjustments. With a cheeky smile, she ran up the stairs to find her heels and start the date. It was the most excited she had been in a long time. Naruto sat, observing his environment. Tenten's place was just as straightforward and tidy as he had anticipated. Simple because, aside from a few pictures of her team, she hardly had any personal belongings lying around. She had no heirlooms or anything like that because she had no family. The girl was meticulous in everything she did, so it was clean. Tenten was meticulous about cleanliness, whether it was dusting or polishing a kunai. I'll have to be sure to pick up more after myself if we ever get more involved. In fact, he would have assumed she owned nothing at all besides a couch and bed if it weren't for the weapons that adorn every wall of the house. In a corner, scrolls were neatly stacked and rolled, ready to be filled with different sharp objects of death. Naruto pondered all he knew about Tenten while leaning back in his chair and bringing one leg over the other so that his left ankle rested on his right knee. He was aware that, unless you irritated her, Tenten was a good person. He was aware that she was a weapons expert who could use a sharp object to accomplish anything she pleased. She could be just as cruel as Anko when she was wielding a kunai. She was as timid as Hinata when she had no weapons. She was confident because she always had a weapon with her 99% of the time, so she was always very confident. The clothes she wore as a child were similar to those she wore now, but they were a little more mature and suggestive. When they weren't fighting, they would spend their time together searching the weapon shed for items she could repair or improve. They talked about their missions and their teammates most of the time, but it was a fun pastime. Given his lack of knowledge about Tenten, Naruto scowled. He would need to start fixing that tonight. Meanwhile, Tenten was humming to herself with joy. She was prepared to leave after completing the required, make the guy wait pointlessly, task flawlessly. She chose to make him perspire a little even though, in reality, she was prepared to leave the moment he entered and only needed to put on her heels. After all, it was both her and his night tonight, She was going out with one of Konoha's most attractive boys, who was also unquestionably the most exotic looking. She would much rather have Naruto's wild, untamed appearance than Sai's Sasuke. Like appearance. It fit her better. She gave herself a nod of approval, patted her hair, and took one last look in the mirror. She put on her heels and started to make her way slowly downstairs to what she hoped would be an exciting evening. When she reached the bottom of the stairs, she paused, slipped stealthily to a wall corner, and peered into her living room. When she noticed Naruto sitting with his legs crossed and a thoughtful expression on his face, a tiny smile appeared on her face. He appeared to be thinking deeply, and she felt that the expression fit him regardless of what other people thought. He tapped a finger on his left knee and sat as motionless as possible, a contradiction she could never explain. He was thinking about her, but she was unaware of it. She chose to have a little fun with her date because, at the moment, her playful nature was winning out. She moved behind the couch, slipped a tanto off the wall, and pressed the knife to Naruto's neck, causing him to bend his head back. "You know, you kept me waiting longer than you should have. Perhaps I should alleviate some stress by shaving a few of your neck hairs." Tenten's eyes widened and she screamed as Naruto's only reaction was to smirk and thrust his neck into the blade before he abruptly exploded in smoke. She glanced around wildly until she heard a snicker behind her and turned to see Naruto standing sideways on the wall. With a foxy smile, he flipped over her head and landed nimbly on his feet before an enraged Tenten knocked him to the ground. Tenten was enraged. Her small joke had not only backfired, but the infamous prankster had outdone her and won. Tenten's mind was racing while the poor boy was recuperating from head trauma and she was taking deep breaths to relax. That was really quite good, damn it. Unbeknownst to me, he Kawarami'd with a clone that I never even saw him create and adhered to the wall behind me. Yes, with him around, life will never be dull. Alright, jackass, get off the ground and let's go. I'm hungry after all that physical exertion and I want to show off my date for the night. What did you say just now? When Tenten considered what she had just said, she blushed a little. Fortunately, she got away with it because the idiot didn't hear the last of what she said. She quickly straightened herself, assisted him in standing, and then escorted him to the door, locking it behind her with a charming smile. She turned to face the now perplexed Jinchuriki, urged him to move forward, and looped her arm in his. He obeyed, and they started their date by marching into the night. Tenten paused their brief conversations to observe the glances they received from those around them as they strolled through the streets. The majority of the older audience was either angry or unconcerned that Naruto was taking her everywhere. The idea that some people could still be so foolish after all these years made her frown. When she cut her eyes and saw that Naruto's radiant smile had not wavered in the least, those thoughts were swiftly put aside. The underlying message was that, despite their hatred for him, they were all envious of him, the beauty next to him, and the fleeting happiness they currently experienced, even though she was certain it was somewhat forced. These were the kinds of times that Tenten would remember in the future and that would make her smile. She glanced at the younger generation's faces and saw that the majority were either smiling because they saw another young couple there or were looking at her or Naruto with jealousy. Although she was aware that she wasn't the most attractive kunoichi, her tomboyish charm and love of sharp objects gave her a certain allure. For most boys, she was a mystery, but in reality, she was simple to understand. She desired love for herself, not for what she could provide. That was Naruto's personality. For better or worse, he loved people for who they were and accepted everything as it was. Above all, he was aware that everyone had vices and flaws. As they went on, she involuntarily tightened her hold on his arm. At the moment, Naruto's thoughts were a little confused. Although he was uncomfortable with the looks he was receiving, he was also enjoying the intimacy that Tenten provided. He was accustomed to the frequent glares and didn't find them bothersome. Was that lust? It was the expression of jealousy. He had never seen that look before, and while it wasn't unwanted, he didn't know how to read it. He didn't understand why, but even though it was nice coming from the street girls, he would prefer Tenten's modest smile to a lustful one on any given day. It might have been that Tenten liked her because he could actually tolerate him. Yes, he would most likely never figure it out. Hey Tenten. Where are we eating it tonight? I thought you knew already. Nope, that's why I was asking. Tenten let out a sigh. She had neglected to inform him of her preferred dining establishment. She refused to admit that she was somewhat to blame. You're supposed to know where I want to eat, dummy, but I'll forgive you this time. We're going back to the sushi restaurant and we're going to have a lot of fun, with a good conversation. Then, on the way home, we're going to walk by the river and talk some more. After that, you're going to take me home, give me a hug, and wait until I shut the door before you leave. You've had a lot of time to plan this out, haven't you? Over a week. Is it too much to ask that I have fun on a date? No, but aren't you afraid I'll screw your perfect date up? He felt like he was the luckiest person alive when she paused in the street and smiled at him again. Naruto, the only way you could have screwed up is if you wouldn't have shown up. Now keep walking, you're making me hungrier. Before they encountered Ino and Sakura, who were out having a great time and gossiping like there was no tomorrow, the remainder of the walk to the restaurant went smoothly. The idea of those two seeing him with Tenten made Naruto groan inwardly. What other people thought of Tenten was more important to him than what they thought of him. Tenten let out a loud groan. Before those two harpies entered the picture, everything was going great. There would most likely be a scene now. As expected, Sakura and Ino saw the couple and joined them right away. Sakura was slightly intrigued as to why they were dressed up, but Ino was beaming broadly. Ino initiated the process. Well, hello you two. What are the two of you doing out on this fine evening? Naruto glanced at Tenten and nodded slightly, indicating that she should provide all of the explanation. The best course of action was to remain silent for as long as possible. We're going to dinner and then take a walk. Anything we can help you two with? We're already running a bit late. I don't want to talk, so get the hell out of the way, was the subliminal message, but an Ino who smells gossip is an unflappable Ino. Ah, I was just wondering why the two of you were all dressed up. You're not on a date, are you? Yes. Oh, I didn't think. Wait, you are? Ooh, and how did you two meet? Tenten let out a sigh and made the decision to end the interrogation right away. When she glanced at Naruto, she noticed that he had trained his features into an unreadable face. At least he is currently making an effort to be good. However, it's hard to predict how long that will last. Ino, we've known each other since the Chunin exams. Naruto and I have been training together for a little while now and I invited him out on a date. Sakura made the decision to show up right then. As usual, she didn't give a damn about Naruto's actions, but at the moment, Tenten and Naruto were unknown to her. Even though she didn't want him, she didn't particularly like the thought of him dating other people. After all, a girl needs her backup. You invited him? Damn Tenten, I didn't know you were that desperate for a date. Why Naruto and not Neji? He's a lot hotter than Naruto. Naruto and Tenten both frowned at that insignificant remark. Naruto was extremely self-conscious about his appearance and disliked being reminded of his differences from other people. He already needed to be reminded of his peculiarities, blonde hair, blue eyes, and whisker marks. She was starting to like Naruto for precisely the same reasons that he wasn't Neji, which infuriated Tenten. Naruto was straightforward and honest, playful and innocent, entertaining and unique. Neji was one of those dull, cookie-cutter, black-haired, foul-humored, I don't care what you think, because I'm better than you types of guys. In Tenten's book, personality was very important, and Naruto had plenty of it. She slit Naruto's eyes once more and noticed that his mouth was slightly ajar, allowing her to see the fangs lengthening, and the lines of his whiskers were getting a little deeper. She made the snap decision to cut the conversation short before Sakura was mauled. Well, I hate to end this lovely conversation, but we need to be going. We'll see you guys later. Come on Naruto, I'm hungry. Yes ma'am. They passed the two girls quickly while holding the blonde's arm, and Ino shuddered as she felt the cool breeze. She turned to Sakura in a rage, feeling that she hadn't received the teasing she desired. Now why the hell did you go and say that, forehead? I still wanted to talk to them. Ah, no harm done. Besides, I'm pretty sure that Naruto begged Tenten to go out with him, not the other way around. Tenten has higher standards than that. You know Sakura, I don't see your reasoning. Just because you don't see Naruto as boyfriend material doesn't mean others don't. He's actually pretty hot. There aren't any other guys like him in the village and most of the civilian girls look at him and blush. Just because you're hung up on one guy doesn't mean the rest of us can't shop around. I know that, but why Naruto? Nobody ever looked at him before. It's because he grew up, Sakura. He's not the idiot anymore. He's not stupid and I'm pretty sure he never was. He just acts that way now because that's his personality. He wants others happy, so he acts like a clown. Tenten's just lucky she got to him before I did. Who knows? In another world, maybe we could have been something. Sakura chewed on what she had been told as they carried on walking. Hot, Naruto? Nah. As Naruto extended her chair for her, Tenten let out a joyful sigh. So far, he had been the epitome of a gentleman, and she was rapidly surpassing her expectations for this date. Back in the back of his mind, Naruto thanked Jiraiya for all the manners lessons he forced on him. Without that old pervert's training, he wouldn't know what to do. They ordered drinks and waited for them to arrive, with him sitting across from her. To break the silence, Naruto made the decision to start a conversation. Thanks for getting me out of there, Tenten. I don't think I could have stood the subtle jabs another second. Tenten gave him a smile and a giggle. No problem. I saw that you were becoming agitated with Sakura, so I decided that we had better leave. How did you know that I was agitated? Your fangs and whiskers were changing. Oh. Yeah. Fortunately, the clunk of the drinks hitting the table broke the silence that had returned. After giving their orders, the two young ninjas sat back in silence once more. Why was communication so difficult now? Perhaps it was the realization that they were going on a date. Naruto blurted out the first thing that came to mind, desperate to say anything at all. You look beautiful tonight, Tenten. That dress really suits you. Tenten chose to play with him after grinning at that. Just tonight. I'm hurt, Naruto. The simpleton that he is, poor Naruto, believed he had offended her. No, I didn't mean it like that. I just meant you look especially beautiful tonight. Normally your beauty radiates above all others, but tonight you look like a goddess. Tenten couldn't help blushing, even though she knew he was laying it on a bit thick. After all, she didn't receive such a compliment every day. Well, thank you, Naruto. You don't look bad yourself. I like that outfit, it makes you look distinguished. Hey, thanks. So tell me, why did you want to go out with me tonight? I thought I told you already. I like you. You're a nice guy and I thought you might be fun to keep around. Like for all eternity. It's unbelievable that he still hasn't figured it out. Oh, well, I'm flattered. Truly I am. I just can't tell you how lucky I am. I've never been on a date before, and to go on one with a girl like you is a real treat. What do you mean, a girl like me? You know, one who treats me like a normal person, instead of a plague or a burden. It's nice to be treated like a human being for once. I guess, your being cute is just icing on the cake. I like your personality best. It's something I could get used to. Really? Well, thank you, Naruto. I just wish we'd done this sooner. It's nice having someone around who can act normal, instead of a cold jackass or a living megaphone. You shouldn't talk about your teammates like that, Tenten. They're nice guys on their own, especially Lee. I know, but you don't have to be around them all the time. Just be thankful you don't have to be on Team 7. Sigh, I really don't know why I stay sometimes. Is it really that bad? At times, yeah. I feel like the odd man out at times. I was trained by a Sannin, for heaven's sake. Why'd I always feel so weak and helpless? I know I can beat Sasuke. I practically could have killed him when we fought at the Valley of the End. But now it seems like there's an insurmountable gap between us. I can't seem to beat him. You're still holding back. Do what? You're still holding back? You didn't want to kill him last time you fought, so you held back. He's not holding back, and therefore he'll beat you every time. But I heard your speech today, Naruto, and I agree with you. You can't afford to hold back anymore. Too many people depend on you and not Sasuke. I'd be sad if you got yourself killed. Naruto was shocked by that. He didn't like an unhappy Tenten for some reason. A frown on her face because of him was a failure on his part, and he was starting to like that smile of hers. He gave her a big foxy smile as he reached across the table and covered her hand. Don't worry, Tenten, I'm not going anywhere. Besides, after the first date comes the second, right? I can't go before we at least get a second date. You're right, I'd like that. And next date is all up to you to decide. Food's here. We spent the remainder of dinner chatting aimlessly, getting to know one another, and listening to Tenten eat sushi with joy. Naruto stayed in the middle. In addition to not being a fan of sushi, he was responsible for paying for Tenten's meal. Chan would be extremely flat until his next mission, poor guy. He paid for the meal after they were done, tears streaming down his cheeks as Tenten massaged her entire stomach, and they set off for the river. As perfect as it could be, the moonlight bounced off the water's surface and fell on the faces of the couple. Her pale skin seemed to glow with luminescence that Naruto found heavenly, and the pale light seemed to give Naruto's silver stars an otherworldly glow that Tenten could not pull herself away from. She was somewhat reminiscent of his vision of Kami. Happy, self-assured, and wise, she was flawless. Tenten simply strolled along, leaning against Naruto and rubbing her swollen belly. There were moments when she couldn't believe the squirt who had beaten Neji was standing like a rock next to her. Naruto could throw Tenten around like a tennis ball, despite the fact that she was by no means small. She closed her eyes and let out a satisfied sigh. She would be happy to comply with Kami's wishes if this first date was a sign of what the rest of her life would be like. She had never been treated so romantically even by her own imagination. But after some time of walking, she grew weary and dragged Naruto to a tree by the water. Being the gentleman that he was, Naruto offered to let her sit on his lap to avoid getting her dress stained. Tenten saw the important significance beyond this. but he, being the simpleton that he is, didn't. But she could see the reasoning behind it. After all, he could swap out a pair of pants more easily than she could swap out her favorite dress. She was wiggling a lot as she settled in, and Naruto was mentally reciting his, "not a pervert," mantra. It was getting harder to conceal his arousal at holding a gorgeous girl in his lap, but he didn't mind Tenten moving around. He finally got tired of her constant attentions to him, so he took her by the waist and held her against him as he felt the wind and watched the stars. He closed his eyes, exhaled deeply, and relaxed. Tenten had been purposefully wriggling in an attempt to elicit a response from him. Although she had received the expected response, she was astounded by the boy's degree of resistance. It seemed as though his sexual frustrations were surrounded by an iron wall of resolve. It would seem that traveling with a pervert would dismantle any barriers he may have had against perversion, but instead, Jiraiya's travels served to reinforce them, albeit marginally. She crossed her arms and sighed, a little annoyed that he could withstand her. Not that she would ever stop making fun of him. Sensing her annoyance, Naruto leaned closer and Foxy squinted his eyes. Did I do something wrong? If I did, I'm sorry." Tenten told him right away that everything was fine after noticing her behavior. Detecting no deception, Naruto reclined once more and closed his eyes, relishing the sensation of the wind brushing against his cheeks. The weapon's mistress couldn't help but be enthralled as she turned back to face her date. Naruto did appear to be a naive angel with his eyes closed and at peace with the world. She leaned against his chest and sighed happily. She couldn't help but notice that he exuded an intoxicating warmth from within. She was content and secure, and she fell asleep quickly. Naruto never fell asleep, but he had drifted into a light sleep. Tenten was sleeping and nestled into his shoulder when he looked down and felt her chest rise and fall rhythmically against his. Grinning, he took her in his arms. He couldn't help but laugh when she buried her face deeper into his chest because she felt so light. In his arms, a girl as deadly as herself was diminished to the status of a mere child. It's better to enjoy it while it lasts. He chose to walk rather than run back to her apartment because he didn't want to feel like he had to leave. After their date ended, Tenten had to accept that, despite how cozy it was, she couldn't sleep in Naruto's arms indefinitely. She let him know she was awake by shifting around and giving him a cute yawn. However, Naruto disregarded her and was almost at her house. He almost dropped her when she wriggled more because she wasn't paying attention to their location. Her brown eyes were staring up at him as he tightened his hold and drew her closer. She sighed and crossed her arms as he laughed and continued to walk. "I know you want down Tenten, but we're nearly to your house. Humor me and let me carry you like a gentleman. Besides, you didn't have any problems while you were sleeping." "I was not." "Oh, so those cute little snores weren't coming from you." She turned away after giving him a slap on the arm. "Jackass. Oh, you like it." Until they arrived at her door and he put her down, there was silence. Tenten put her arms around Naruto's waist and embraced him as he stood there, unsure of what to do. "Thanks for tonight, Naruto. I had a lot of fun and we definitely need to do it again." "Whenever you want, Tenten. Good night, Naruto." She leaned closer, kissed him on the cheek, turned on her foot, and locked the door before he could say anything more. She heard the excited boy shouting, "Good night," from down the street, but she didn't hear his little "good night." That night, she smiled as she went to sleep. The girl with the bun was undoubtedly having a good time. Light as a feather, Naruto bounded home in ecstasy. Before crashing into Sanosuke, he screeched to a stop as he ran through the door and up the stairs. He asked the angel a question, and the angel smiled back at him, brightening the room. "So Naruto, did you enjoy yourself tonight? Since you seem to know all about it already, why don't you tell me?" "Oh, smart are we? Well then, yes, I can tell you that you did enjoy yourself. Do you know why you were so comfortable with her?" "Because she's cute and nice to me?" Sanosuke shook his head and sighed. The boy was still a long way off. He turned back to Naruto and smiled at him. "Don't worry, boy, you'll get it one day. I'll see you later. I have other things to do." Naruto was a little irritated when Sanosuke vanished without a trace. "If you have other things to do, then why in the hell did you come see me?" Naruto laid down and fell asleep, forgetting Sanosuke, dreaming of his date with Tenten and future plans. Once more, Sanosuke knelt before Kami and shared his opinions about their date. Kami wished Naruto wasn't so stupid, but progress was fine. The deity certainly had a harder time of it. "I've never seen anyone who could be so innocent at such a subject. It's like he doesn't have a clue. What do you expect from one that has never known the love of another before? He doesn't know how to react to this level of intimacy. Wait until she wants a bit more from him. Heh, he's gonna freak out." "Yes, that will be humorous to watch. Or hear about rather, not that I would watch." "Of course not, master. You would definitely never do that. Without fail, Naruto woke up the following morning to the sound of a knock on his window. With bleary eyes, he turned to see a messenger bird. He shooed the message away, picked it off its foot, and opened the small scroll. Naruto, you're on a mission. B rank. By 9 a.m., arrive at the tower. Tsunade, he rolled over with a moan and tossed his pillow over his head. He had been off for more than a week and didn't want to get up, but he couldn't refuse a mission. He simply didn't have it. He got up to dress, giving the bird a final shady glance as it took off. Perhaps it would be an opportunity for him to practice his new dance and hammer. On his way to the Hokage's office, Naruto yawned. To get rid of all the kinks, he cracked his neck and stretched his arms back and forth. The creak and groan of his bones and muscles pulling and popping made people who were passing by wince, but he ignored them. Still thinking about the date with Tenten, his thoughts were elsewhere. Spending an evening with someone who treated him like a normal person had been amazing. She didn't threaten him, she didn't hit him once on the head, and she didn't expect him to do anything extra for her pleasure. All Tenten wanted was for him to be himself. He was eager for their upcoming date. But who can predict when that will happen? Relationships aren't exactly suited to ninja schedules. Naruto headed to Tsunade's office, leaving his hammer outside this time to avoid a potentially dangerous encounter with Shizune. He sighed as he walked through the door after waving to Shizune and saw that the Hokage was drooling on her desk and unconscious. If the woman was never going home, why didn't she simply place a cot in the room? Compared to that desk and chair, it would be far more comfortable. He crouched next to her chair and gave her a gentle shove, bracing himself for whatever was coming. Ba. Shan, you need to wake up. Come on, wake up. Wakey, wakey. Hey you old bitch, wake up. Naruto leapt to the ceiling and became trapped there with chakra before her reflexes could take over. As Tsunade searched everywhere but up for the one who had betrayed her, he was trying not to laugh uncontrollably. That voice had sounded familiar, and he was still alive if that was who she believed it to be. However, Naruto's luck had changed, and he ended up in an unceremoniously heaped position on top of her desk after the ceiling tile he had been clinging to broke. With a sly smile, Tsunade pinned him by the shoulders to the desk. Well, I go to sleep for 5 minutes and it's raining cute lil blondes. Little bratty blondes, but cute nonetheless. Let me up, Ba. Chan. Now why would I do that? I believe you fell into my lap, not the other way around. Besides, I always wanted a fox as a pet. Don't joke like that please. You know I hate being compared to that bastard. With a sigh, Tsunade released him. Aside from his fox-like features, the boy could handle a joke. They were what made him so special, and it wasn't her fault. She looked at the clock and saw that it was slightly past 8:30. Sneering at her younger subordinate, she raised an angry eyebrow. Didn't they teach you kids that ninja never show up early? You show up on time, at the exact time. I had another good 30 minutes before Sakura shows up to sleep and you ruined it. I'm sorry, but I wanted to talk to you. Oh, about what? Me and some choices I've made recently, go on. I've made a conscious decision to stop pursuing Uchiha Sasuke. I won't put my life or the lives of my comrades in danger because of him. What brought this about? And how, exactly, are you talking without sounding like an idiot? It's a gift from Kami. I was never truly stupid, Ba. Chan, just ignorant. There's a difference you know. I can think more clearly now thanks to the gift. It's refreshing to be able to think clearly. Does it have anything to do with your eyes? I don't know. I was starting to think with a clearer head before the eyes, but when I received them it seemed to speed up the process. I don't know if they affected it or not. Is it a dujutsu? I don't think so. I'll have to ask Sanosuke next time I see him. Sanosuke? He's an angel, he gave me my gifts. With a groan, Tsunade clutched her head in both hands. Why had this child had to complicate things so much? So let me get this straight. Okay, the first day you came in here, you had a war hammer from Kami. You were looking to find your soulmate too, if I remember correctly. How'd that go? Staring at the ground, Naruto flushed. Well, I don't know. I've been training with Tenten and we went on a date last night, but I don't know if that means anything. So you and Tenten, huh? One enjoys causing trouble, while the other enjoys sharp objects. The idea is too unsettling. Loves trouble, pointy things, any offspring of theirs. It was just one date, it doesn't mean anything, she asked me. She asked you, huh? Doesn't seem like nothing to me, but hey, that's just me. Getting off your burgeoning romance with a weapons mistress and back to the prior topic, can I meet this Sanosuke? You can meet me if you want to. When two blonde heads saw the brown-haired man standing with his arms crossed behind his back and a smile on his face, they instantly snapped to attention. Tsunade couldn't help but feel that he was someone she knew. But Naruto wasn't nearly as impressed by his arrival. "Sanosuke, how in the hell do you do that without letting anyone know you're there? I want to learn to shunshin without smoke." "Don't pout, Naruto. It's unbecoming an emissary of Kami, no matter how much she favors you. Tsunade, I see you are well." "Hi, I am. And you are the infamous Sanosuke, I presume?" "Indeed. Care to tell me what exactly is going on with my favorite blonde over here?" Sanosuke smiled and sat down next to Naruto. He positioned himself and then turned to Tsunade. "Naruto is a very special boy. You knew this already, but he is favored by Kami and is her own shinobi. He is charged with catching a certain tainted soul and bringing it to my master. I can't think of a better person to give this responsibility to. But he has so much already to burden him. Isn't this another thing to the pile that he just doesn't need? Couldn't you have found someone who is a little more responsible?" Before Naruto could object, Sanosuke covered his mouth with his hand. He glared at the Jinchuriki before turning back to face Tsunade, who was impressed by his ability to control the boy. Naruto is chosen because he can handle the responsibility. There are few others in the world who could shoulder the burdens he carries and not break under the strain. He is my charge in this world, and although you view him as a soldier under your command, know that he is under mine as well. I will not supersede your orders, but he has other objectives. I have given him gifts to compensate for his earlier misgivings in life, and he shall receive a few more before too long as necessity dictates." "What gifts have you given him?" "Well, the hammer is a given. It's a holy hammer and is uniquely Naruto's. No one else can use it. I'm also currently prodding him along the path to find his love in life, who I'm sure you've guessed by now. His eyes are the most intriguing thing though." "Yes, they are. Are they a dujutsu by any chance?" "No, they are most certainly not. Now you are speaking like a Hokage and less like a concerned family member. I know how much Naruto means to you, Tsunade. Don't let your loyalty to this village cloud your judgment. You need every advantage you can get, yes, but you already have one." "I agree. Naruto is a very good asset. Now then, his eyes?" "Ah yes, his eyes. When he visited Kami, Naruto retained a bit of the calm that Kami emits. It made his mind clearer and he was able to function better. Things he already knew, but had pushed aside, were made readily available to him. You know as well as I do the boy is an astute student as long as he's interested. Kami gave him the eyes because eyes are a portal to the soul, and as such, he can draw out his other gifts as the time comes when he will need them." "How will I know what gifts I'll get though? It's already been ordained that you will receive the gifts as the time dictates, Naruto. I can't tell you any more except that you hold within you nothing but pure potential and a will to succeed. Those are some of the reasons Kami chose you. Now don't worry about your future gifts. You'll know when you get one." "How?" "Your eyes will change more, just like your hammer. They'll evolve to a new state. It's just a matter of time." By this point, Tsunade had opened one of her sake bottles and was drinking it sparingly. Sakura entered the scene at this point. She noticed her master's half-empty sake bottle and the brown and blonde hairstyles that protruded over the chairs in front of the desk. She scowled and walked to the side of the desk. "Shisho, what has Shizune told you about drinking in the morning? It's bad for your health. And what in the hell is Naruto doing here, and who are you?" Sanosuke smirked slightly as he turned to face Naruto. "I see now why you think she's so bitchy, Naruto. Not a pleasant lass in the morning in the least." "Excuse me? I'd like to hear you repeat that." Tsunade was fed up. The entire morning was a complete bust. She discovered that Naruto had been telling the truth all along, lost some of her valuable nap time, and now had to put up with a sour Sakura. It was a truly ideal morning. "Sakura, take a seat and shut up. I had things to discuss with Naruto and his friend, and no, I will not tell you. Sanosuke, I'd appreciate it if you'd visit me at a later time and we'll swap notes about our charge." "Hi, I'd like that. I guess I'll be going now. Good seeing you again, Naruto." It was as if Tsunade's mind suddenly became illuminated. "Sanosuke, before you go, are you the one responsible for this?" She swept her hand over Naruto's new appearance. Every time she saw it, her appreciation grew. "Yup, that was me. Are you also responsible for getting rid of that thing?" "Yup, that was me too. I have some money owed to you then. We've been trying to get him out of that thing for years." Sanosuke simply grinned and got ready to go. "No charge, Tsunade. Use the money to buy some good stuff for our next chat. Besides, it was a service to Kami to get rid of Naruto's former clothing." He vanished without a trace, leaving Sakura and Tsunade in awe and Naruto mumbling. Seriously, the jumpsuits weren't that bad. The meeting began after Kakashi was 2 hours late, which caused Naruto to become enraged and stew. Sakura had been quiet, and Tsunade had been chatting lightly with Naruto. The familiarity with which Naruto and her master conversed still occasionally amazed her. Both blondes glared at the gray-haired Junin as he entered, and Sakura gave off a hint of murderous intent. "Kakashi, let me get one thing straight. I want you on time from now on, or I will demote you. I've let you have your way for quite a while now and you haven't shown any sign of improving on your own. I'll start small at first. For every 10 minutes you're late, I rip a page out of your book. Understood?" Kakashi could only give a stupid nod. It was the harshest the third had ever been. He would rather be demoted to Genin once more than have his priceless book torn to pieces. Tsunade continued after interpreting his silence as approval. "As you all read, this is a B-rank mission. You are to infiltrate a small fort that the Sound have set up right inside our borders and either get information or destroy it outright. There are at least 3 Junin-level ninjas there, several Chunin, and some Genin. As always, do not assume that this information is accurate. Act with caution. Naruto? Yes. Try to use some of that newfound intelligence that Sanosuke was talking about. I'll try. Kakashi, you should all leave as soon as possible. Dismissed." Naruto turned when he heard Tsunade call him, and the 3 of them headed for the door. He saw a smirk on her face and a strange gleam in her eye. "Take that hunk of metal with you and see how much damage you can cause. I hope that you 3 get to demolish the place." Naruto gave her a cheesy thumbs up and smiled. "Don't worry, Ba-chan. Since when has there ever been a mission involving me where shit didn't go boom?" It didn't take Naruto long to gather his pack and make his way to the designated gate. While waiting for his 2 teammates, he was aimlessly spinning his hammer in the air like a baton after snagging it on the way out of the tower. He sighed as he kept spinning the hammer, soon growing tired of it. Although the dexterity training was beneficial, he became disinterested and eventually tired of it. Since he couldn't predict when his teammates would arrive and he couldn't stand there bored, he didn't want to start a kata. When he was bored, bad things happened. There was quite a sight to greet Sakura and Kakashi when they arrived. Humming a tune, Naruto balanced his massive warhammer on his nose, completely unaware of them. By this time, he had attracted a sizable number of kids who were amazed that he was capable of doing this. The kids glared at Sakura for spoiling their fun, and she scowled and pushed them away. Smirking at their antics, she looked at the blonde who continued to ignore Kakashi and her. "Naruto, quit clowning around and let's go. We've got a long way to go." Naruto effortlessly swung the hammer to his back after letting it drop into his hand. His face was filled with boredom as he gazed at his teammates. "Can we go now? I've been waiting here forever it seems." With Kakashi leading the way, Sakura in the center, and Naruto in the rear, they took off. They set up camp before nightfall after running all day. Now that they had Naruto all to themselves, Sakura and Kakashi made the decision to ask him directly. Just inside the fire's glow, Naruto was using his hammer to slowly go through his katas. Kakashi made the decision to begin. "So Naruto, how did you actually get that hammer?" When responding to their inquiries, Naruto never wavered in his position. "I already told you. Kami gave it to me. What's up with your eyes?" "Kami changed them. Did Kami give you anything else?" Boosted my intelligence. He froze in mid-stance after Sakura snorted. "Please don't scoff at me, Sakura. I don't belittle you, so don't belittle me. We're teammates, let's try to act like it. Why are you acting all high and mighty all of a sudden? Did that date with Tenten go to your head? Trust me, Naruto, she's nothing to get excited over." The tree behind them burst into splinters, and the next thing Sakura and Kakashi knew, there was a flash of red between them. Sakura's expression was one of sheer horror, and Kakashi's invisible mouth was wide open. They both trembled with unrestrained terror. With his hammer gone, Naruto remained motionless. Even though he was motionless, his eyes conveyed a different message. "Don't talk about Tenten like that, Sakura. I won't have it." After retrieving his hammer and stepping between the 2 stunned ninja, he crossed the small clearing and sat down on the opposite side of the fire. His eyes were visible to them, and they blazed with righteous outrage. "Listen to me, you 2. I am Kami's own shinobi. I am here to find a tainted and evil soul and send them to divine judgment. I nearly died that day I fought Sasuke and I met Kami while I was out. I've had some weird shit happen to me in my life, but that took the cake. I have a huge hammer, sparkles in my eyes, and an angel for a friend. I've given up on Sasuke as a person and I don't believe that we should pursue him anymore. But Sasuke is an ass. He left us, Sakura. I've realized that now. I won't pursue him, but if we run into him, I will kill him. You can have him back when he's good and dead." "So you're breaking your promise to me?" "No, the promise was I'd bring him back, never said alive." Kakashi's blonde pupil narrowed his eyes. That's cold, Naruto. Especially for you. I don't know who you think you've been talking to, but the Naruto I knew wasn't like this to his comrades. Like how? Truthful. The truth hurts, Kakashi, but it doesn't hurt me. Sometimes I wonder why in the hell we were all put together on your team. We were a mismatched team, we had no preordained goal. We couldn't track, we couldn't infiltrate, we weren't frontline material, we couldn't strategize. What purpose was there for putting us three together, except for having Sasuke graduate? He wouldn't have meshed well with anyone else, so why not put him with his biggest fangirl and the one boy he hated above all others? That's not true. What's not? That he hated me. He stuck a Chidori through my chest. Not once, not twice, but multiple times. If that's not hate, I don't want to see what he does to people he hates. It would be horrible, I'm sure. After taking a deep breath, Kakashi looked at Sakura. What do you think, Sakura, about Naruto's new goals? I think they're a bunch of crap. This isn't a Naruto I know. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto got to his feet. I'll take first watch. Don't worry about this new Naruto. After this mission, I'm going to ask Ba-chan for a transfer to another team. We obviously don't get along anymore. My views and yours don't mesh. Kakashi, I'm following your lead this last time, so don't fuck up. Hold on, Naruto, let's not be hasty. I don't want you to transfer, and neither does Sakura. We care about you. Naruto's blue eyes were blazing as he rounded on them both. Oh, you care, huh? I was watching after that battle, you know. I saw everything. The two of you picked me up like so much common garbage, no words said, and trudged back to Konoha. You didn't check on my condition, you didn't do anything. Just drag the dumbass back until he's healed so we can make another pass at the Uchiha. Well, I'm sick of it. After this mission, I'm gone. And those Auto Nin better pray that you vote not to destroy that base. Why? Because I'll destroy them all. Anyone who follows Orochimaru is a bad person in my book. Besides, I need to test my hammer out in battle. Waiting for his signal to start, Naruto knelt in the tree line. That base had a number of more ninjas than they had been initially informed. It was better for him because he had another thing to handle to relieve his stress. Suddenly, Tenten was on his mind. He had departed without saying goodbye or leaving a note. He was going to make her angry. Perhaps Sanosuke had been so gracious as to tell her on his behalf. No, there was a sadistic streak in that angel. He most likely wanted to see the beautiful woman with the bunny hair berating Naruto. He knew it was his floor when he heard a sudden crackle over his earpiece. It was Naruto's responsibility to clear the dance floor and make room. As a result, he hurried in, smashed a wall with his hammer, and then crushed the Chunin guard next to him. With his hammer on his shoulder, he leapt over the now demolished wall and landed lightly in the courtyard, observing all of the Auto Nin that were all around him. The whispers about his hammer were audible to him, and they gave him a positive feeling. Here, he could put himself to the test. The boy who had jumped into their base made the Auto Nins nervous. He carried a hammer that was heavier than he was, and he appeared to have no trouble flinging it around. The Junin decided he was very good at dealing with the pest and stepped forward to do so. Once more, the report had been deceptive. 7 Junin were present. Naruto squinted his eyes. That was more than he had anticipated. I hope Sakura and Kakashi were handling the rest. Naruto launched himself at the closest Junin without saying anything more. Then he started weaving in and out of the small crowd, thrusting and swinging, pivoting and twirling, and it became a real dance for him. One Junin had been crushed beneath his hammer, his ribs broken, puncturing his heart and lungs, and he had already killed 2 Chunin with a well-placed swing. Naruto had to go into hiding to catch his breath, though, as the battle soon started to wear him down. He heard them shouting around him, looking for him, as he sat behind a section of the wall that had been destroyed. It would not be long before they located him. With a wince, he looked at his right arm once more. Since he began the fight, it had been hurting, and there was no indication that it would stop. He was unable to pinpoint what had caused the dull ache to begin. This wasn't helping, and he didn't need any distractions at the moment. He had to put a swift end to this small disaster. What the devil happened to Sakura and Kakashi? When an explosion occurred and half of the base was destroyed, he was answered. For demolition, a shinobi's best friends were detonating tags. Thankfully, the blast had destroyed the majority of the forces. He only had to deal with 1 Junin now. Regretfully, he appeared to be the most skilled Junin among them. The Junin from Otto was enraged. He was told there wouldn't be much opposition when he was given the task of establishing this base just inside Fire Country. He was confronted by this blonde brat who had removed his best men because everything had gone wrong. To put it mildly, it was unsettling that he was swung that hammer around like a rubber mallet. Making the child drop the hammer was the best way to beat him because it appeared that he depended on it. Yes, that was the best thing to do. With the intention of removing Naruto's weapon, the Junin leapt at him. Naruto dropped into his stance, hammer behind, left leg and hand forward, prepared for any attack, as he watched the ninja approach. Naruto started his lethal dance when the Junin tried to punch him. The nin leapt back when he thrust his palm out at the other man's chest, but Naruto's hammer struck him with force and swung past him. Before he felt flesh tear and looked down to see a shallow wound across his chest, the Junin's face was smirking. The spike on the end had slipped his mind. I wouldn't repeat that error. With a thrust here, a swipe there, and a swing down with the hammer, Naruto continued to weave in and out of the man's defense. When he attempted a downward strike, he made a tactical error that the Junin quickly exploited by kicking Naruto in the jaw and sending him flying. After skidding across the ground, Naruto rolled back and straightened out. Wiping the blood from his cheek, he scowled at the Junin, who was standing atop his hammer in triumph. So boy, what now? You don't have your weapon, you're powerless. You Konoha nin are all the same. Take away your favorite toy and you're like a little child again. Lord Orochimaru was right in trying to destroy the leaf. Naruto's blood boiled at the mention of Orochimaru. He made the sign for Kage Bunshin while crouching close to the ground. 10 Narutos instantly flooded the room, their silver eyes gleaming. You'll find that I am far from useless without my weapon. I don't like your master, and as far as I'm concerned, your vocal support of him has sealed your doom. Farewell, fool. I'll see your trip is quick, but certainly not painless. On all sides, the Narutos charged the Junin while forming Rasengans. Neither he nor the neighborhood knew what had struck him. He left no traces of life behind. Before activating the tags, Sakura and Kakashi had observed the fight from a distance for some time. Naruto's use of that hammer against so many opponents was astounding, but he moved with a fluid grace that belied the awkward weapon. They moved to blow up the base after he started to eliminate his opponents more swiftly. With that hammer, the blonde made a good distraction. To keep him on their team, they would have to exert every effort. Returning to the elevated position, they observed Naruto destroying the Auto Junin. He was efficient, lethal, and merciless. It was the first time they had ever seen him act that way. An exhausted blonde was left behind when 9 Narutos suddenly vanished. He walked sluggishly over to his hammer and picked it up, then turned to face the direction his teammates were going. Kakashi, Sakura, hurry up and finish the job. Blow this place to hell. I'll be waiting for you just outside. He gritted his teeth and sat against a tree a half-mile away. He was experiencing severe arm pain that didn't seem to want to go away. His muscles felt like they were about to burst from the dull throb that had turned into a full-blown tearing pain. He simply waited for his team while enduring the pain. The auto base ended with a massive mushroom cloud and a loud explosion, and a few minutes later he heard Sakura and Kakashi's footsteps. He got up, swung his hammer to his shoulder, and silently followed them. With anxious expressions on their faces, Sakura and Kakashi continued to look back at Naruto. They hadn't seen him hurt in the fight, but he appeared to be in pain and kept gripping his right arm. Hell, he hadn't even been hurt. He was never touched by the auto nins except for that one blow. Kakashi offered to take first watch after they set up camp several miles from the location of the base. Unaware of the anxious expressions on Sakura's and Kakashi's faces, Naruto dozed off without saying anything. In his dream, Naruto was dwarfed and stood next to the fox at its strongest. It was enormous and terrifying, and he was certain that it would quickly kill him. However, the Kyuubi did not attempt to harm him. It would not attack. It would only snarl, gnaw its teeth, and glare. Why it simply stood there was beyond his comprehension. He heard a loud clink and turned to look around, thinking it was safe for the time being. As his eyes strayed downward, he became aware of the chain that ran from his ankle to the Kyuubi's. So this is what Kami must have meant when she said, fettered together. Yes, brat. We are shackled together, as disturbing as that is. You had to go screw that up too, even though I was almost free of you. Compared to living in your repulsive body, I would have been far happier in hell. Well, excuse me for following the direction of the almighty Kami. This is your punishment after all for being evil. Every creature has a bad boy. Even you. You simply decide not to do it. However, I'm interested in your new outfit. Why take such pride in my image if you despise me so much? It's to remind me of what you were and what I am. And just what is that? I am the yang to your yin, just as you are the yin to my yang. We cancel each other out, but we both possess a small amount of each other in our souls. I know you were there, watching and listening, when I met Kami. How couldn't you be listening? You're inside me. We are connected, against our will, by the will of another. I can't separate myself from you, So why not be proud of the fact that I am the container of the most powerful beast? Are you pleased that I live within you? Naruto grinned and squinted his eyes. I am proud that I have the strength to hold back the Kyuubi like a rat in a cage. What a weakling you have become. With a roar of rage, the Kyuubi flashed its teeth. What a stupid mortal. You can be sure that I will go to hell and look for you when we pass away. In the next life, I will taste your flesh. You won't be saved there by Kami. Silly fox. If you can't break our bond here, what makes you think you can defeat me there? My will powers the seal. My power itself feeds the seal. If you can't even defeat my body's natural defenses from the inside, what makes you think you can take me head-on in a fight? Experience is very important, mortal. Although your power is at least equal to mine, I may not be able to fight you head-on, but I am cunning, old, and wise. In times of conflict, ingenuity is crucial. Have you forgotten Kyuubi? I am also a master of tactics in mid-battle. The playing field is more even than you think. We will determine who is superior when we fight, which will happen when and not if we are mortal. What are you doing? Proving to you that I can hold you with my power. Naruto started pulling hairs from his head and weaving them into a rope while the Kyuubi looked on in amusement. After completing his task, Naruto tied one end of the rope to Kyuubi's ankle and the other end to the cuff around his own ankle. He grinned grimly as he looked up into the Kyuubi's eyes. Now to prove that the seal is not the only thing holding you in. My power and belief in what is right are the seal. The squiggly lines are just a conductor. He grabbed the links that held the chain to the cuffs and pulled, causing the links to break and the chain to clatter to the floor. The Kyuubi roared with laughter and smiled malevolently. You have shattered the ties that bound us together, stupid kid. Watch now as I escape this pathetic jail. The Kyuubi attempted to jump out of the seal but fell back to earth next to Naruto. He shook himself and glared at the boy who was standing with his arms folded. What is this deception? There is no way your hairs could be more powerful than a chain. My hairs alone. No, my hairs imbued with my resolve and my dedication to keep you jailed. Yes. You're here to stay, Kyuubi. Now shut up before I put a muzzle on you. Desperately attempting to break free of the golden rope, Kyuubi threw himself around in defiance, only to be thrown back into his cage with the seal placed over the door crack once more. Gazing at the glowing blue chain that was visible on the floor below, Naruto grinned and sat down again in the soiled water. Throughout the night, Sakura and Kakashi had not slept at all. As they watched, Naruto's face twisted into a variety of horrifying shapes and he began to perspire profusely. There was nothing at all wrong with him, according to Sakura's diagnostic jutsu. He was only thinking about whatever was happening to him. And who knew what a Jinchuriki's mind was like? Maybe he was having another argument with the fox? They would only know when he woke up. Since Naruto had fallen asleep, Kakashi had not opened his book. His mind was elsewhere, but his eyes were fixed on Naruto's sleeping form. With his blonde pupil, where had he gone wrong? They were his first team, but he would acknowledge that he hadn't been the best teacher. Why wasn't he given any leeway? They were the strongest ninja since the Sannin, in addition to being his first squad. Nevertheless, history was repeated. Sasuke was a traitor of the highest kind, the next Orochimaru. Sakura, with her fiery temper and incredible medical prowess, became the next Tsunade. Additionally, Naruto, and all around ninja who was capable of almost anything he set his mind to, became the next Jiraiya. The boy appeared to be unstoppable, recovering from situations that would drive most people insane. He gave a headshake. Why hadn't he taught more effectively? Sakura's eyes threatened to close, but Naruto always managed to force them open again just as she was about to fall asleep. She couldn't stop thinking about his announcement that he was leaving the team. Were she and Kakashi really that bad? Yes, they chastised him for his foolish behavior, but what else had they done? They were a good team, even though she had occasionally hit him and Kakashi hadn't really taught them anything. Correct? With a sigh, she raised her knees to rest her chin. Perhaps she exaggerated how pleasant things were. Whether they wanted to acknowledge it or not, she and Kakashi were very reliant on Naruto. When Naruto's body began to glow blue, she was startled out of her reverie. When they looked again, they saw that Naruto's arms were encircled by chains that began with a cuff on his left wrist, wrapped around his arm, crossed his shoulders to his right arm, and then flowed down to connect at the end of the handle of his hammer that was lying next to him. They had watched as the blue glow started to center around his arms and shoulders before a bright white light filled the clearing. He appeared unconcerned despite the fact that every part of his arms was encircled by chains. When he woke up and stretched while yawning, they still stared at him with wide eyes. His eyes were bleary as he cracked his neck and glanced at his stunned teammates. What? Sakura simply pointed to his arms since she was at a loss for words. He listened to the clinking and clanking as the links clattered together as he flexed his arms and waved them in various directions. He turned to his teammates and smiled sheepishly, wondering if this was another one of his gifts. "Believe me now?" An affirmative nod was given by two heads. The remainder of the journey home was largely silent as Sakura and Kakashi reenacted the events of the trip in their minds and Naruto experimented with his mobility with the hammer and chain. When they returned, they had questions that required answers. Kakashi left after being checked in at the gate to report to Tsunade and attempt to convince her not to pay attention to Naruto's demands. But Sakura was attempting to persuade Naruto to speak with her. He refused to accept it. "Come on Naruto, just talk to me, I want to know what's going on." "Damn it Sakura, I've already told you what's going on. Kami blesses me with powers when I'm ready. Last night was just another gift coming into play, although I could do without the dreams that accompany them." "What dreams? Tell me, I'm going to find Tenten. I'll see you if I see you." Trying to ignore the people who were staring at him even more than before, Naruto strolled around Konoha. There was going to be more intrigue in his life than before. His attire and hammer certainly made him stand out, but now that he had chains around his arms, clinking as he moved, he was a real sight. He truly didn't see the need for this gift, so all he could do was hope Sanosuke would explain it. He decided that his hunger was overwhelming him and started to walk in the direction of Ichiraku's until he heard a voice that he was starting to recognize. Abruptly terrified, he looked around and made every effort to blend in as much as possible. He was aware that he ought to have informed her of his departure. Uzumaki Naruto, it's undeniable. Tenten was furious with him. When Tenten called his name, Naruto winced. He waited for the punch, ducked his head, and closed his eyes, but it never arrived. He opened his eyes to see Tenten standing in front of him, her arms folded, her foot tapping crazily into the ground. She looked expectantly at him and arched an eyebrow. Well what? Don't you have something to say?" No." She grabbed him by the collar of his shirt and jerked him forward until their noses met and his eyes met hers. Her eyes narrowed. He glanced at the people who had paused on the street to witness the spectacle as his eyes darted back and forth. He looked back toward the front and braced himself for whatever she might have planned. "You asshole, I told you when I was leaving to go on a mission, but you have the gall to just leave without notifying me. I thought you were better than that." But Tenten, I had to leave quickly. I didn't have time to find you." "You couldn't have left a note?" "Well, you couldn't have sent a toad?" You see, Tenten decided to let him off the hook because she had sufficiently humiliated and punished him. He had wide eyes and a shocked expression on his face as she leaned in and kissed him. She smirked as she stood back, hands on her hips, letting go of his collar. "You ever go off without telling me again and I'll pound you into the ground at our next training session. Now for punishment, you owe me a nice dinner of my choosing, whenever I want, okay?" "Yes ma'am." "Good, now follow me." Following the brown-haired bombshell, Naruto left a trail of perplexed onlookers in their wake. Just moments before, the girl appeared to be about to kill the blonde, but she let him go with a kiss and a pledge to pay for her dinner. Why couldn't they have women like that in their lives? After completing his report to Tsunade, Kakashi was dismissed by her, but he refused to go just yet. Leaning on the desk, she lifted an eyebrow and put her hand to her cheek. "You have more to say, Kakashi?" "Yes, Hokage. Sama, I do. I want to plead with you not to transfer Naruto to another unit. Sakura and I need him. We're not a fully functioning unit without him." "Why can't you do without him? From what I've seen of your missions over the past few months, Naruto is your go-to guy, the frontline fighter. If he's not comfortable with the two of you anymore, why make yourselves and him miserable? I can place another heavy hitter on your team to replace Naruto and everyone will be happy." "I won't be. Naruto is my student, my responsibility. I've taught him since day one and I won't have him taught by anyone else." Tsunade sighed and inhaled deeply as she considered the words she wanted to use. "Kakashi, no offense, but the only things you've taught Naruto were tree walking and the cage bunshin method of training, and that was a joint effort with Yamato. Sakura might have warmed up to him some over the years, but as far as I can tell, she still harbors feelings for the Uchiha, regardless of the fact that he's a traitor. Naruto, in recent days, has told me he no longer wants to pursue him and that is a major factor of your unit. Give me one good reason for not allowing him to transfer. No one else will put up with Naruto except Guy, and I know that he can't train 4 students. I have the most experience in dealing with him when the Kyuubi tries to come out and you can't deny that. Please Hokage. Sama, I never ask for much, don't break up my team, they're all I have left." After briefly tapping her finger on the desk, Tsunade turned her chair so that Kakashi couldn't see her face and faced the window. "I'll think about it." Dismissed. Thank you Hokage, Sama. Tsunade kept staring out the window as Kakashi shunned away. Why oh why, is it that having that brat around prevents me from ever having a normal day? Following Tenten dutifully to their favorite training area, Naruto almost bumped into her when she abruptly turned around. He remained motionless as she walked around him, prodding the chains and examining his attire. Then she smirked and gave him a slap on the ass. He yelled and gave her a fierce look. What the hell was that for? Just because. Now, why don't you tell me where you got the chains from and what the deal is with your eyes? What about my eyes? They're different again. The outer parts of your eyes are silver now and some parts of the stars are covered up. All in all it just makes you look more exotic. But we'll worry about that when Sanosuke pops up. Now, about those chains. I don't know. I went to sleep with my right arm hurting and had another weird dream and woke up with these chains on. I haven't bothered to take them off and I don't know what they do. Don't they hurt or pinch the skin? Not really. In fact I don't feel them at all. And the length behind my neck is long enough that I retain all motion of my arms. It's like they're molded to my skin. Weird. Well, let's train a bit shall we? I have a new dance for you and I'd like to see you do it. Maybe Sanosuke will show up at some point and we can find out what your new gift entails. Before we begin though, I want you to fight me without your hammer. What? Why? Because I want to make sure your taijutsu isn't getting rusty. Naruto simply shifted into a rough stance and nodded. He was more or less a brawler, albeit a tactical and practical one, having never received formal training in his style. In his mind, he was thinking, why not take the punch and lead into something of your own if you were going to be hit? Tenten settling into one of her stances and the sound of steel leaving a sheath interrupted his thoughts. Oi Tenten, what the hell? I thought we were practicing taijutsu? You are. I'm going to attack you with my katana and I want you to block. Don't try to hit me, just block. She rushed forward and swung at his neck before he could react. He instinctively flipped out of the way and stood prepared once more, but was taken aback when she gave him a fierce look and started tapping her foot. I said block you moron. Don't flip away and don't dodge, block. But Tenten, no excuses. He ducked to the left as she swung once more. She continued to become increasingly irritated until she finally lost it. You block this next strike or I'll stick this katana up your ass sideways. Do you hear me? I'm your sensei, now do as I say. When she swung, Naruto snarled and used the chains on his arms to bat the katana away without saying anything. He didn't notice the smirk on her face because he was too angry. Those chains were an ideal defense against Kenjutsu, though he was not yet aware of this. He could easily get inside an opponent's defenses by knocking them off balance and striking them. Tenten took a low stance and retreated. The dance of burning leaves was a fast, moving sword style that darted in and out before ducking back and coming in again. It made quick cuts and jabs. Tenten was nothing if not adaptable, but it was a style for shorter swords that involved making tiny, precise cuts on the flesh and then returning to deepen them further. Before he twisted the sword's tip between two links and pushed his arm away, she sprang forward and thrust the katana at his chest, hearing the clank of metal on metal. Finding his other arm in the way, she turned on one foot and swung the sword behind her. This went on for a few minutes until she grew weary and retreated before collapsing onto her butt. Damn, how do you keep going like that? I just do. Now what the hell was that all about? I could have been hurt. I don't think so. This was a lesson on the defensive capabilities of those chains. You didn't even realize that, did you? No, I guess I should have though. I've really only thought of the offensive capabilities, not the defensive capabilities. And what would those be? Catching an enemy off guard, snatching their weapon out of their hands, using the chains to choke them from behind. It's too bad I can't control them with chakra or something. I'll find out what they do when Sanosuke comes back though. It's getting kind of late, huh? Do you need to go home? Yeah, I do. I have a date to get ready for tonight. Naruto was saddened by this, but he was unsure why. Even though he was beginning to like Tenten, he had no right to be upset if she was seeing other people. After all, she wasn't his girlfriend. He crinkled his eyes into that foxy look and forced a smile, sighing in defeat. Oh really? Who's the lucky guy? After seeing that small show, Tenten made the decision to have a little fun. The boy was hopeless when it came to dating, even though he was becoming smarter. Well, he's really nice and sweet, a total gentleman. I went out with him a while ago. He's kind of tall, really good body, a great ass, and he smells really nice. I think he's perfect. So you did get with Neji? No it's not Neji. I thought we already had that conversation. Oh, yeah. Well, I don't think it would be any of our group other than him, except for Lee. Oh my god, it's Lee. Tenten resisted the impulse to give him a headshake. Rather, she got up and approached him on unsteady feet. "Take me home, Naruto. I can't walk there, I'm too tired. I need to get ready for my date tonight before he gets there. We'll continue our lesson tomorrow, okay?" With a nod, Naruto gathered her in his embrace. She scooted closer to his chest, relishing the sensation once more. Even though she knew she wasn't, she felt so tiny in his arms. He simply made her feel that way. He got her home in a matter of minutes and got her standing outside her door. "Well, here we are. Now I want you over here at 7 sharp, you understand?" Naruto gave her a disbelieving glance. What on earth would she want him for? Not that I mind, but you said you had a date tonight, right? I don't want to impose." Tenten sighed, then gave him a perplexed look as she grinned and patted his cheek. She turned back to him after opening her door and giggling. "I was talking about you, doofus. Now go home and get ready. Take a shower and put on some nice clothes. Remember, it's your turn to pick where we eat, now get going." After standing motionless for a while, Naruto walked slowly toward his apartment. He suddenly realized everything she had said. "Hold on a second. I smell nice, and I have a nice ass," she said. "I'm flawless," she said. Perhaps I do have a chance with her after all. Already pondering what he should wear to attract her attention, he bounded off for his house. For some time now, Sakura had been wandering aimlessly through the streets. Her mind kept returning to all of the times she and Naruto had spent together, including their training sessions and times of laughter. It goes without saying that such memories were rare. She recalled that she had beaten or insulted Naruto most of the time when he had reprimanded Sasuke or offered to fight him. Before long, she was outside his apartment complex. Other than knowing that Naruto would console her whenever she was feeling low, she was unable to come up with a reason for being there. She inhaled deeply before climbing the stairs to his apartment and rapping on the door. "Naruto? It's me, Sakura. Can I come in? Quiet." "Naruto, I know you can hear me. I just want to talk for a bit." There is still no sound. Sakura started to lose her temper. "Naruto, open the damned door. I want to talk to you now." She heard footsteps coming up the stairs and felt the floor tremble a little as she was ready to slam her hand into the door. "Sakura, what are you doing here? I want to talk to you. I want you to stay with us." "My mind's made up. All I need is Chan's approval and I'm gone." "Please Naruto, don't do this. I don't want to lose another friend." "You're not going to go away, are you? Not until I convince you to stay." "Whatever. Look, I have to get ready for a date, so if you won't leave then come on in, but I'm leaving once I'm done." Sakura trailed after him inside and paused just beyond the door. The place looked cleaner than she had anticipated. The floor was reflective and the kitchen counter shone, but it wasn't military clean. There was only a couch, an armchair, and a shelf brimming with scrolls in the living room. Ino had told her that the few potted plants in full bloom in the only window she could see were extremely challenging to raise. She sat down after Naruto gestured to the couch. "Would you like something to drink? Water or a soda?" "No," she shook her head. Naruto just shrugged and started to move in the direction of his restroom. "I'm going to take a quick shower, so feel free to explore if you want. Grab a scroll, read, whatever. I'll be out in a little bit." Sakura listened to the sound of running water while she was seated on the couch. She got up, scanned the room, but couldn't find anything of interest, so she walked across the floor to his bedroom and pushed the door open. The complete absence of anything in the room startled her. With just a bed, a dresser, and an end table with a rug at the foot of the bed, Naruto's life was extremely minimalistic. But her attention was drawn to what was on the end table. The otherwise empty room was dominated by a few pictures. A photo of Naruto with the third Hokage when he was a young boy, a photo of their team shortly after it was formed, and a photo of Naruto, Shizune, Tsunade, and Jiraiya at a hot spring. It was depressing to think that was all he had. She left the room and proceeded to the flowers. They were all very attractive, and one couple had a lethal appearance. When she returned to the photographs, her thoughts quickly left the flowers. Now that she was aware of the Kyuubi, she also knew that Sasuke was aware of it. Kakashi was aware from the beginning. Despite carrying such a heavy load, Naruto always maintained an air of aloofness and optimism. And for that, she had detested him. She had criticized him for everything, even after he returned from his trip with Jiraiya. With her head in her hands, she collapsed back onto the couch. She had a lot on her mind. After turning off the water, Naruto exited the shower. After he had recovered considerably, he recalled what was in his living room. He put the towel around his waist and grimaced. He walked out into the room, cursing himself for forgetting to bring his clothes. When Sakura heard the click of the bathroom door opening, she had not been focused on anything in particular. She didn't anticipate seeing Naruto only wearing a towel and half naked. She quickly averted her gaze, blushing angrily, thinking that maybe she ought to have listened to him when he was younger. His body was buff and tanned, and his hair fell in a very seductive way without the headband. She blushed, and Naruto sighed to himself. This was not what he needed now. He suddenly recalled that Tenten had not indicated whether or not she desired to wear formal attire. Quickly, Kachiyose no Jutsu was cried, and a tiny toad materialized. How are things going, boss? Gamasuichi is my name. I'm glad to have met you. Hello there, Gamasuichi. I need you to run an errand for me if you will. Yes, of course. What do you need? I need you to go to Tenten's house and ask her what I should wear this evening. Can you do that for me? Tenten. Who the hell is he? Taking a deep breath, Naruto raised the toad to his eye level. Tell me, Suichi, can you sense my chakra? Yes. So if you were lost you could find me again, right? Yes, but I'm not sure where you're taking this. Tell me, do you like sweets? Yes, I adore sweets. According to Gamakichi, he always receives candy from his summoners. Well, if you do this for me I'll buy you 2 pounds of candy, okay? But you have to make it back in under a half hour. However, I have no idea where this Tenten resides. Don't worry. I'll take care of that. You might not like me after this, but I'll still buy you that candy. Okay, that sounds fantastic. But wait, since he could see Tenten's apartment from his window, Naruto opened the window, determined the necessary trajectory, and threw the unwary toad across Konoha, straight through her window. He turned and shrugged his shoulders at Sakura with wide eyes. What? While brushing out her hair, Tenten heard a faint squealing that grew louder and louder until a tiny object smashed through her window and onto her bed. Without hesitation, she snatched a kunai from her dresser and assumed a defensive position. When the lump on her bed started talking and cursing her man, she almost passed out. Foolish summoners and their foolish missions. When I return, I promise to tell the chief. I get this nonsense for the first time in my human life. I have to return in 30 minutes after getting chucked halfway across a city. I have no idea who this Tenten girl is. What a dumbass summoner. Before it hopped around and faced her, Tenten watched with interest as the small toad screamed and yelled about summoners. She leaned back against her dresser and cocked her head. Hello, woman. Do you know what a Tenten is? I meant to track her down and ask her a question. I might know her. What do you have to ask her? I was instructed by my so-called summoner to find out what she wanted him to wear this evening, and if I don't return with her response in 30 minutes, I won't get any candy. Oh, you poor thing. Who's your summoner? Naruto Uzumaki. Tenten attempted to suppress her laughter, but was unable to do so because the poor little creature was so miserable that it might not receive any candy. Gamasuichi jumped off the bed, looking very annoyed at her. Well, I'll be leaving if you refuse to assist. Humans are stupid. When the toad puffed up in outrage, Tenten was able to catch her breath enough to grab it off the ground and almost passed out from laughter. No, I'm Tenten. So Naruto threw you across Konoha to ask me what I want him to wear, huh? That sounds like him. What the heck? Is he your boyfriend? Tenten's face flushed. Well, it's nothing official yet, but I'd like that very much. I think we need to go out a few more times before that happens though. Oh, I see. Yes. What should he wear, then? I was just going casual. Nothing fancy. Can you tell him that? I'll add a pound of candy to whatever he's giving you. Gamasuichi paused to reflect. He would receive a ton of candy if these two called on him to deliver their messages every time. The experience of being flung across a city was worthwhile. Additionally, he wouldn't need to be thrown if he figured out how to get from here to there. Yes, this would undoubtedly be successful. Yes, I would really like to. I'm going to leave now. Gamasuichi leapt from her embrace, landed on the bed, and then escaped through the window. Leaning out, she saw the energetic little toad leap away and come back to Naruto. With a giggle, she went on with her hair. It was certainly intriguing to have a soulmate like Naruto. Still only wearing his towel, Naruto had taken a seat in his chair and listened to Sakura's justification for his stay. If only he would stay, she had vowed, she and Kakashi would change and become better friends. In fact, he was aware that would never occur. Sakura would always be an obsessive bitch, and Kakashi would always be a perverted slacker. Look, Sakura, my mind is made up. Unless Tsunade tells me that I can't leave, I'm gone. And if that happens, as soon as I can rise in the ranks, I'm still leaving. If she says I can't leave, she's just postponing the inevitable. End of story. Sakura's eyes told the tale as she stood there. Her teeth were grinding and tears were forming at the corners of her eyes. She was unable to recall ever being so angry. She was drawing blood because her hands were so tightly balled into fists. Well, fine. Forget it then. If you can't see past the past, then I have no further reason to try to be your friend. I hope you do get transferred. You don't want to save Sasuke anyway. Naruto thought the door would fall off its hinges when she slammed it so forcefully. He flopped back down in his chair, checked to make sure it was still operable, and checked the clock. Gamasuichi had just 5 minutes remaining. He tipped his head back and sighed. He had just an hour to pick up Tenten, and he would buy him the candy to make up for throwing him across town, even if the little toad didn't return in time. The sound of something slapping against his door jolted him out of his reverie. He padded over and opened the door to discover Gamasuichi puffing and huffing. I made it. Have you got any water? I feel a little thirsty. After giving the winded toad a nod, Naruto placed him on the counter and filled a sake dish with water. Gamasuichi quickly gulped it down and took a deep breath. Did I arrive in time, then? Absolutely. You made it with 2 minutes to spare. Now what did she say? Dress casually, she advised. When will the candy be delivered? I'll summon you tomorrow after I go to the store. I promised you £2, correct? He responded by nodding in agreement. £2 it is then. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Gamasuichi waved and nodded before vanishing in a cloud of smoke. Naruto laughed inwardly. The most intriguing summons was always the one he found. He ran to his room and started to dress. He wanted to fool Tenten, even when he was dressed casually. Tenten pondered their date's outcome as she sat on her living room couch. The thought of the small toad thrown through her window made her laugh. It was very Naruto. It had been worthwhile, and she owed that little toad a pound of candy. At least tomorrow, she would have something to share with Lee, Neji, and Guy. A summons was not thrown across town and into someone's bedroom every night. She laughed once more. Probably the only person in the world with balls large enough to treat his summons cruelly like that was Naruto. Orochimaru was afraid of his boss's summons, too. Naruto didn't seem to give a damn. Gamabunta's liking of Naruto was fortunate because he would have long since passed away. She looked at the time. 15 minutes more. Walking briskly, Naruto reached his destination. He felt optimistic about the night. He wouldn't have to put up with Sakura again because they had already had a brief argument. This gave him a distinctly positive attitude. He would like to spend some time with Tenten without being interrupted by a curious friend or teammate. He stopped at her door, ironed his clothes to remove the non-existent wrinkles, and knocked 3 times. Before the second knock, Tenten had already gotten up from her couch. She was eager to see him once more. She opened the door and looked up and down at him commendingly. She liked him dressed more formally because it made him seem more like a king. However, it was a good alternative to see him wearing a black leather jacket with white shirt and baggy black pants. She watched him glance up and down at her, a smirk spreading across her face. It was satisfying to feel valued. Naruto was unable to look away from the girl in front of him. He would never accomplish anything if she had been permitted to wear that during their training sessions. Tenten was dressed to kill in a blue skirt that hung just a few inches above her knees and a black tank top. It was difficult for him to look away from her, and he was aware that other men would experience the same difficulty. He couldn't tell her to change into something else, but the idea of people staring at her made his blood boil. It simply wouldn't work. He shut the door after she ushered him inside. He was clearly attracted to her, and Tenten was trying hard not to laugh. She could have engaged in a few more years of teasing if she had discovered the boy sooner. She made do with sensuously sashaying her hips as she walked in front of him on her way to the living room. Naruto was finding it increasingly difficult to focus on the date rather than Tenten's ass. Following her dutifully to her living room, he gulped and tried to keep his gaze on the back of her head. Tenten told him she would return in a minute and sat him down on the couch once more. Naruto made the decision to calm himself and engage in some training. He took off his shoes, walked up the wall, and sat in the lotus position on the ceiling. He started taking deep breaths to help him relax. Tenten believed that allowing him to relax would be beneficial, but she had only gone to her room to get her necklace and apply a little lipstick. After spending a few minutes reading a Kanai magazine while seated on her bed, she got up and pushed her skirt back out. She slipped back into the living room, figuring she'd kept him waiting long enough. He had reversed her the last time. She would definitely get him this time. She couldn't help but smile as she peered around the corner. While meditating, Naruto kept his eyes closed and paid little attention to his surroundings. After expressing gratitude to her landlords for her low ceilings, she crept as stealthily as she could until she was in front of him. She felt compelled to reach out and run her fingers through his limp hair, but she knew that would ruin the surprise. She kissed him instead, puckering her lips. When Naruto saw it was Tenten, his eyes widened and darted around, but he calmed down. He leaned into the kiss until she pulled away, deciding it would be better to not fight. He couldn't help but notice that her breasts were incredibly noticeable in that tank top because he was already looking down. He was also having trouble focusing because he could see down her shirt. Seeing where his eyes were, Tenten glanced down at her breasts, then smirked and met his gaze. Like what you see, or would you prefer a better view? It was that. His focus wavered and he thumped to the ground. With a moan, he sat up and rubbed his head, attempting to block out a Tenten that was laughing. He took her hand up and put his shoes back on, complaining about sexy witches. After Tenten put on her sandals, they headed out for dinner. He decided that a local barbecue restaurant, which Choji had mentioned was pretty good, would be a better option for dinner on a date than ramen. I hoped Choji wouldn't be present. Tenten chose to tease her date for a short while after they placed their orders. So tell me, Naruto, why did you throw poor Gamasuichi across town? I didn't know what you wanted me to wear, so I did the only thing I could think of. I kind of had a guest at the moment, so I couldn't leave. Oh. Who? Sakura. Tenten's smiling face instantly disappeared. Wasn't that little bitch with the pink hair already trying to ruin her day? However, Naruto had been making good use of his newfound intelligence and noticed Tenten's attitude had changed. He was right to guess that she was jealous, and he took it out of her hand. Don't worry, Tenten, I don't see Sakura like that anymore. She came over to try to convince me not to leave the team. When Tenten heard that, she was startled out of her plans to maim Sakura. Why would you leave your team, Naruto? That doesn't make sense. I don't see eye to eye with them anymore about Sasuke, and I know it'll cause problems down the line. I'm just trying to head it off. Well, okay, but I think you're making a mistake. You don't have any experience working with anyone else, and besides that you're still a genin. You've already been on more dangerous missions than any genin in history has. Why mess with a good formula? I don't know, I just think this is the best way out. She felt that a change of pace was needed because the atmosphere had changed. Let's talk about something else. Hey, let me tell you what Lee did to Neji today. Dinner arrived and ended without any further problems. Once more, Naruto and Tenten were strolling alongside the river. Sensing that she was shivering, he removed his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. Squeezing the jacket as tightly as she could, she took his arm and wrapped it around her shoulders. He was taken aback by her suddenness, but he gave in without hesitation, and the two walked for what seemed like an eternity. Tenten quickly became exhausted, in contrast to Naruto's boundless energy. She was exhausted from that training session earlier in the day. She slapped her lips and gave a cute little yawn. Tonight was another wonderful date, Naruto, but I need to get home to sleep, and so do you. We have a hard training session ahead of us tomorrow and you'll need all the energy you can get. Now how about scooping me up and taking me home? Naruto scratched the back of his head and smiled at his date. If I didn't know any better, Tenten, I'd say that you actually enjoyed being toted around by me. You certainly seem to demand it a lot. She nudged him, half asleep already, and he picked her up. She closed her eyes and nestled into his chest. Yeah, it's nice. You're warm. She was out like a light in an instant. With a smile on his face, Naruto headed for her residence. Instead of waking her when he arrived, he made a cage bunshin to retrieve her keys from her pockets and open the door. As Naruto carried her to her bedroom, the clone shut the door and poofed herself out of existence. Everything was more pink than he had anticipated. After all, Tenten had a girlish heart and loved the color pink. After all, tomboyism was only so successful. This small piece of information made him smirk, and he put it away. To see if she would squeal with joy, he might buy her something pink. However, he had a drowsy girl to put to bed for the time being. Don't write off the clone just yet, he sighed to himself. He called forth another, and it removed her sandals and drew back the covers. He dismissed it after completing its task. He put Tenten down as gently as he could, and when she whimpered sweetly at the cold, he couldn't help but laugh. As he pulled the covers over her, she snuggled into the jacket more, and he decided she could keep it. He leaned over and kissed her forehead, and she had a ghostly smile on her face. Although it was more than just an embrace, he felt it was appropriate because he had recently discovered that she was a loving person. With his heart as light as a feather, he left her home after noticing that she was securely tucked in. As he left the room, he never heard the murmurs in her sleep. Night, Nar. 2, love, you. When Naruto got home, he literally flew upstairs. Since their last date, he hadn't felt this good. He hummed an unidentified tune and opened his door to see Sanosuke smiling and standing with his arms behind his back. Hello, Naruto. I assume you've been well? I was just going to bed when I had a case of cripes. Sleep was for the weak anyway, so whatever. With a sigh, Naruto collapsed on the couch. As long as he wore his jacket, he had been able to get away with wearing the chains on his arm, but Tenten's decision that she was cold had taken that luxury away from him. He turned to face Sanosuke and waved his hand in a circle, hoping the angel would go on. The man with the brown hair arched an eyebrow and stood up. With a groan, Naruto got back up. Okay. Why are you here? Why Naruto, I'm hurt. No hello. No how you doing? Tisk, you should be ashamed of yourself. Well, I'm not. Now come on, let's get this over with, I have to meet Tenten in the morning. Ah, training again? That girl is a slave driver. Yeah, she is. But she helps me at least, it's more than I can say for others. Be that as it may, we have something else to discuss. Namely those chains on your arms. Do you know how you got them? Well, I had another weird dream. I was talking to Kyuubi and I broke the chains around our ankles, tying him back up with strands of my hair. I said that no matter what we were tied with, my willpower was the thing that held him back. Then I woke up as I was staring at the glowing chains in that murky sewer water. In the real world, I had these on. I can't seem to get them off though. Tell me, do you know what the purpose of those chains are? Well, Tenten showed me how to use them as a defensive thing. That was pretty cool. Other than that, no, I've had some ideas for offensive capabilities, but I can't get the damn things off. Get your hammer and come with me. What, why? Sanosuke glared at the blonde as he turned his head. Haven't you learned yet that I don't do anything without a reason? Now get your hammer and follow me. We're going to the training grounds. Man, I gotta train with Tenten tomorrow. If I'm not rested, she'll kill me, literally. I'll take care of that, now come on. Naruto glanced at him, not entirely believing the angel. Like Naruto, he was a prankster, but he was a decent enough guy. The angel walked with his hands behind his back, much like someone Naruto used to know, and Naruto stalked off after him, shouldering his hammer. Naruto let his hammer fall to the ground with a loud thud and a quake once he arrived at the training grounds that he and Tenten now regularly destroyed. With a sigh, Sanosuke looked at his subordinate. Now then, I'll ask you again, what do you know about these chains? I already told you what I know, I don't know anything else. You're not thinking again. This is a gift, Naruto, and all your gifts are connected to that hammer some way so far. Think, what can you do with that chain? Leaning against the hammer, Naruto took a seat. He always seemed to think more clearly when it was close by or in his grasp, for whatever reason. It helped him relax, which was a good thing. He clasped his hands together, crossed his legs, and closed his eyes. With his hammer in his hand and the chains around his arms, he pictured himself on the battlefield. He saw himself use the hammer to knock people around and the chains to deflect kunai. The enemy was soon out of range, though, and he was unable to approach closely enough without exposing himself. How was he going to obtain them? Naruto opened his eyes and fixed his gaze on the angel who stood before him, his eyes bright and watching. Seeing someone else reach a realization was always entertaining. It was always hilarious when they made that face when it finally came to them. What if I attached the chain to the hammer's handle and swung it? Sanosuke clapped his hands together and grinned. Let's give it a shot. Naruto got up and used his right hand to grasp the hammer. He turned to Sanosuke with a sheepish smile after glancing from the handle's end to the chain's final link. Okay, give me a hint. How'd I attach this thing? Just push your chakra into both and they'll connect. Once more, Naruto closed his eyes and focused on forcing chakra into the two objects. Although it didn't take much, there were a lot of links to fill, and each one needed to be charged separately before the hammer would accept it. His eyes snapped open as he saw the chain start to come loose and the final link affix itself to the handle of the hammer. Watching Naruto's jaw drop in wonder, Sanosuke's smile threatened to shatter his face. That's so awesome. Now let's see. Think outside the box. What to do? Ah, I know. Naruto focused his attention on a boulder across the clearing. He started spinning the hammer by the chain while holding it above his head, turning it into a real propeller. This would also serve as a strong defense. He let the hammer fly and eyed his arms curiously as he assessed the boulder. The chains simply unraveled and followed the hammer, never seizing his skin. He watched as the hammer struck the boulder and split it in two, confirming that the chains were not dangerous. He turned back to Sanosuke, leaving the hammer and chain lying on the ground, glowing slightly. So, not bad, huh? Indeed, very impressive. Now how do you propose you get it back? You can't very well leave it there, otherwise you'll be vulnerable. Actually, I was hoping you'd tell me something. If these things are imbued with my chakra, can I control them independently of the hammer? Kind of like Gaara's sand? You could try it. First try to get the hammer back. Recall the chain mentally and see what happens. Naruto focused and nodded. He repeatedly wished for the hammer to come back. With a loud slap of metal against flesh, the hammer returned to his hands, and his eyes widened exponentially as the chain came flying back, the links winding over his arms repeatedly. Sonosuke nodded his approval and gave the boy a pat on the back. Very good, Naruto. Now detach the hammer and try your other idea. How? Just take back the chakra in it. Yep, easy as that. With a nod, Naruto withdrew his chakra. The chain came loose from its end and wrapped around Naruto's forearm as the dim glow of the hammer faded. He sat the hammer down and tilted his head. He focused as he saw the chains come loose from both wrists and start to float in midair, winding and twisting like a serpent. Naruto ordered them to attack Sonosuke in order to observe what transpired. A few feet away from the Jinchuriki, the angel had been joyfully observing as his most recent gift started to materialize in a very practical way. But as soon as the chains appeared to awaken in midair and focus on him, the smile vanished from his face. The chains were after him as fast as lightning, and he ducked and flipped as skillfully as a man in a robe could. He glanced at Naruto during the brief moments he had to catch his breath and noticed the boy grinning. He would, in fact, impart some knowledge to the arrogant youngster. The angel darted toward Naruto and started punching and kicking vigorously, quickly erasing his smirk. Naruto attempted to control the chains to hit Sonosuke simultaneously while blocking with his arms and shins. The outcomes were not entirely consistent. If he was blocking, he was unable to focus hard enough to launch a counterattack, and by the time he did, Sonosuke had ducked to another position and was hitting him there. Naruto let out a growl of exasperation, reached out with his left hand to seize the angel and the chain around his left arm, got up, and followed the blow. As Sonosuke ducked and dodged around the chains like a ballet dancer, Naruto realized what he had done and leapt back a few feet, waving his hands like a conductor. Until it started to become a bit too risky, the angel continued to dodge, trying the boy's skill with the links. He didn't have to worry about dying because he was an angel, but it still hurt because he had a body. He had only grunted to make it seem like they were an inconvenience, even though the kunai Naruto and Tenten had impaled him with had caused him great pain. It's comforting to know that Kami is the only person who can kill you. As the chains ground against each other, Sonosuke swiftly flipped out of range, screeching as though they were upset that their victim had escaped. All right, that's enough. Naruto swiftly willed the chains to come back, and they swiftly encircled his arms. Before removing the chakra from the links, he stood and waved his arms around to make sure the chains were tight. He exhaled and grinned at Sonosuke. Well, what I think you need a little more work. I want you to practice all night tonight on making the chains bend to your will until it becomes second nature. Making gestures with your hands seems to make the chains flow more easily, but I would like to see them work almost independently like your friend Gaara's sand. Do you think you can do that? I don't know. I'll try, I guess, but you want me to work all night and I have to meet Tenten here tomorrow. How am I going to practice if I'm dead tired? With a sigh, Sonosuke moved to face Naruto. I'm an angel, you stupid boy. If I don't want you to sleep for a full day, then you won't sleep for a full day. In fact, I'll make it so you won't fall asleep until midnight tomorrow. Sonosuke lifted his hands and slapped Naruto on both sides of his head before he could object. The blonde frowned and swore at the angel, who smirked and stepped back. Damn it, why does everything you do to me end with me getting hit? Was that really necessary? The touching of the head to negate your need for sleep? Yes. The slaps upside the head? No, that was just for fun, now get to work. Naruto laughed to himself as the boy swore and cursed like a sailor, but before he could throw his chains at him once more, Sonosuke vanished. Tenten sat up in bed and yawned. She hadn't had a good night's sleep in a long time. It had been greatly aided by the pleasant smell that filled the air. She wasn't used to it, but it was calming and comforting. She turned slightly to see what it was, and as she stretched her arms, she felt something slide off her shoulders. When she realized it was Naruto's jacket, her eyes grew wide. Grinning, she lay down and pressed the jacket to her cheek before sitting up, flushed, and scanning the room. It was fortunate that no one was present to witness that small detail. She shivered as her bare feet struck the chilly floor after swinging her legs off the bed. She bounded into the bathroom, decided it was time for a shower, and turned on the faucet. She thought about the previous night as she washed and her mind started to work. They hadn't done anything noteworthy, but it had been a lot of fun. She felt like a queen, though, because of the small things Naruto did. Carrying her home in his arms, letting her wear his jacket, and pulling out her chair for her. When she considered that, she let out a sigh. As a true gentleman, he had even been so kind as to tuck her in and go. And he had such a lovely warmth about him. It was euphoric. She really wanted him to carry her everywhere for that reason. In addition to that, it gave her a sense of protection. It was difficult to be a kunoichi. You rarely had the opportunity to display your sensitive side and had to be tough as nails. It was not an exception to be an abrasive bitch like Sakura or Ino. She was frantically massaging her head as she walked out of her shower, a towel wrapped around her body and on her head, when a flash of white caught her attention and she looked up into Sanosuke's amused eyes. She let out a cry and started throwing everything that wasn't nailed down at him. In a friendly manner, he sidestepped everything, catching the items that might endanger her apartment and placing them on her bed until she became calm enough to talk to him. "What the fuck are you doing in my apartment? You can't just appear whenever you want, Angel, and I know you knew I was in the shower." "Well, yes, but I didn't expect you to come out nearly nude. You're very well toned, by the way." "Shut up. Don't talk about me like that or I'll tell Naruto. He hates perverts." Sanosuke laughed heartily and threw back his head. "My dear, that boy is a hypocrite of the highest order, and I'm not a pervert. I just wanted to let you know something and then I'm gone." "And that would be? Now don't be angry with me, but I have Naruto at the training grounds right now working on those chains of his. Don't worry, he'll still be fresh as a daisy for you this morning. At midnight though he'll pass out at whatever spot he's at, so you might want to make sure he's in bed by then. I'm sure he'll forget that detail." "Training with the chains? What's he doing? Tisk, tisk. Better for you to find out on your own. It'll be more fun that way." "Fine, whatever. Just leave so I can get dressed." Standing on her tiptoes to reach the top shelf, she crossed the room to her closet after passing Sanosuke. Before he vanished, the towel moved just enough to reveal a broad smile on Sanosuke's face. "Nice ass Tenten. Naruto would approve." With her kunai in hand and her eyes blazing and her teeth exposed, she whipped around to discover that he had vanished. She trembled with unrestrained rage. Fucking perverted angel. She pulled Naruto's jacket closer to her as she moved through the streets. There was a little wind, and it was nice for the warmth. Her hand instinctively went to her katana's hilt as her mind drifted back to what the angel had told her about Naruto training all night. She would have to work with Lee, Guy, and Neji since they couldn't practice if Naruto was exhausted. When she had an epiphany, she became alert. She would take Naruto with her and force him to endure the embraces if he was too exhausted to exercise. Misery enjoys having company. She saw Naruto sitting cross-legged on the ground with his arms in his lap, leaning against his hammer as the chains twisted and tangled around him as she cropped the hill to their training area. With caution, she moved forward, her hand on her sword's hilt as it slid off her back. As she got within 10 feet of him, she noticed his nose twitch and the chains turned to face her, as though the links on the ends had noticed her. Leaping for him, she slid 1 foot forward. However, she found herself struggling against the chains rather than rolling away or blocking. They appeared to move on their own initiative and had amazing strength. After giving them a close inspection, she stabbed Naruto in the head. Before driving the sword into the ground behind him, one of the chains encircled it and yanked it out of her grasp. After that, the chains kept dancing around him, occasionally rubbing against one another to produce that terrible screech. With a sigh, Tenten took a seat in front of her soulmate. She questioned how someone could become so proficient at something in a single night when he seemed to be dozing off or in a trance. To check if he was truly unconscious, she waved a hand in front of his face. "Good morning, Tenten. That wasn't nice, trying to stab me, you know." Tenten played with one of her hair buns and flushed. "Well, I was just testing you. Yeah, that's it. I wanted to see what you could do. That's very impressive, by the way." "Thanks. Hey, let me show you another trick it can do." As the hammer behind him started to glow a little, she watched with fascination as the chains on his left arm swiftly encircled his arm and the chains on his right connected to the hammer. She gave a grateful whistle. "Wait, that isn't the trick." When the hammer and chain rose into the air and started spinning like a propeller, she arched an eyebrow and her mouth fell open. She turned just in time to see it destroy a nearby tree as it soared over her head. Naruto laughed as he reached out and pushed the girl's jaw back into position after opening his eyes to see how shocked she was. Now, we don't want you catching flies, do we? So, what do you think?" Tenten turned to face the hammer and marveled as it appeared to float and landed behind Naruto once more, the chain disengaging and encircling his arm. "That's pretty damn cool. Can it do anything else?" She screamed in shame before being gently placed in Naruto's lap as the chain around his left arm swung out and wrapped around her, lifting her into the air as he smiled. She gave him a shoulder punch as she flushed. "Jerk. What? I thought you'd like the ride. I don't have to actually carry you anymore now. I can have my hands free too." "I'd prefer you actually carry me." "Oh, why's that?" Tenten simply nuzzled him while putting her arms around his back. Naruto tensed up and started to sweat. Tenten. What are you doing? Shut up, dummy. I'm enjoying the silence, and besides, it's chilly and you're warm. Okay. But why are you enjoying the silence? He closed his eyes and waited for the declaration that would put an end to his brief existence as Tenten gave him a menacing smile. Because in a little while you're coming with me to train with Guy, Lee, and Neji. And you're going to do it like a good little boy. Got it? With a sigh, Naruto leaned back against his hammer, closed his eyes, and relished the sensation of her touch against his. Fine. But I'm taking my jacket back when we get there. Tenten's eyes never opened. Not on your life, Buster. As Tenten dragged him along, Naruto sighed. He wasn't particularly looking forward to having to cross Konoha to get to her usual training grounds with Team Guy. When Lee and Neji were by themselves, they were cool guys, but when Guy was around, Lee was a sullen asshole and Neji was a self-destructive maniac. Abruptly, he recalled his pledge to Gamasuichi and dragged Tenten into a confectionery. What the hell are we in here for? I promised Gamasuichi that I'd buy him 2 pounds of candy if he'd help us. Now help me pick out some candy. I gotta buy him a pound too. That little toad isn't ever gonna eat all of it. I'm sure I'll be suckered into summoning some of his buddies so that they can eat it all. I don't think he can take it back with him, but I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure he can't handle 3 pounds of candy though by himself. Tenten made their purchase after laughing. Naruto didn't want to explain to Gamabunta why a group of young toads were so incredibly hyperactive, and 3 pounds of candy doesn't seem like much until you consider the amount of sugar in it. He slung the candy bag over his shoulder and accompanied the girl with the brown hair to her training area. He noticed a white blob and 2 green blobs as it came into view. While the other green blob performed push-ups, the first one was pumping his hands in the air. It looked like the white blob was meditating. Naruto started counting down as he shuddered at what was about to happen. 3, 2, on. Ten. How wonderful of you to join us on this most youthful morning. Come, and I will show you all how to maintain your flames of youth. Guy. Sensei, look, it is Naruto, come to show us how hot his flames of youth burn. Good morning, Naruto. Will you two keep it down? I don't think Western Konoha heard you yet? Tenten, you're kind of yelling too. Stuff it, Naruto. Abruptly, Guy stood in front of them, his teeth gleaming in the early morning light. Tenten, I am sorry that my youthful greeting was so boisterous. Allow me to apologize by showing you a new way to throw kunai with your toes. Lee will be your target as his punishment for being too loud. As the well-known scene played out, Naruto stood by and observed. Lee thanked Guy, sobbing, and the two collapsed into their man-hug after Guy offered him something ridiculous. He went across the grounds and sat by Neji, leaving Tenten to her own hell. Morning, Neji. Neji opened one eye and smiled slightly at his friend. Good morning, Naruto. What's with the chains? Naruto crossed his legs, his smile threatening to shatter his face. I'll show you in a second. Let me get the attention of the Spandex Brigade. Hey Tenten. Bring the tear monkeys over here and I'll show them my new technique. While they were ranting about how young Naruto was for demonstrating his new technique to them, Tenten pulled them over by the seats of their pants. As he observed Neji massaging his temples, Naruto laughed. Despite their annoyance, he knew that Tenten and Neji wouldn't trade Guy and Lee for anything because they were 2 of the greatest people in the world. Tenten might want a new kunai, and Neji would want some peace for a while. Okay guys, check this out. Watch the chains and then watch the hammer. Neji, you might want to stand by them. Neji moved to stand next to Tenten, but she seemed to be a bit too close because she shifted to the side. Shutting his eyes, Naruto focused his chakra on the chains. The 4 of them heard that terrible screech as the chains unwound and started to wind around him. He smirked at the faces of the 3 men and opened one eye. Tenten was grinning as she tucked his jacket around her. Oh, my man is awesome. Even as his smirk evolved into an evil grin, Naruto cocked his head and narrowed his eyes at Neji. When Neji saw the expression, his eyes widened and he sprang to the side, using his Byakugan. He rolled quickly to his feet and took up his position. As Naruto started to herd them together, the other chain attacked Lee and Guy, and the 3 of them started dancing. This caused Lee and Guy to trip over one another, and Neji to twist in ways he wasn't aware of in order to avoid them. After a few minutes, to Neji's relief and to Lee and Guy's exclamations of delight, Naruto grew bored and returned the chains. Yosh. That is a very useful technique, Naruto. Might I request that you train with us and try to hit Lee and I as we dodge? Naruto, who never misses a chance to improve, smiled at the dynamic duo and shrugged. Sure, but before you agree I have one more thing to show you. As his hammer glowed and the chain fastened itself to the end of the handle, Everyone leaned in to watch it lift into the air and spin in circles. When it destroyed a tree behind him, Naruto's eyes widened. It quickly reappeared before the chains rewound around his arms and he leaned back against the hammer. Neji deactivated his Byakugan in amazement. That was most impressive, Naruto. So little chakra was used to control them, and yet it was a devastating attack. Most impressive indeed. Guy struck a reflective pose and nodded his head. Yes, that was indeed a powerful attack. I hope that you will take Lee and I up on our offer. You seem to have to concentrate a lot to make it work. If Lee and I are attacking you while you attempt to control it, perhaps it will become like second nature and you can perform jutsus while doing it eventually. Naruto and Lee both nodded their heads simultaneously. That sounds like a very good idea, Guy. Sensei. But I'll just watch you guys train today. I was up all night working. Besides, I have to pay a friend a debt today, and so does Tenten. Oh yeah, I nearly forgot about him. Call him out now and we'll get that over with. Gamasuichi reappeared in front of them after Naruto created the required seals. Hello, boss. Have you received the goods? Sure do, Suichi. You know this is a lot of candy, right? Would you like me to call any of your friends to help you eat it? Yes, that sounds like a lot of fun. It will be like a day off because we little toads don't get to come out here very often. Where's the adorable baby? She also owes me £1. I'm right behind you. Here's your candy, and thank you again, Suichi. Now I've gotta go train. Naruto, I'll be back later. Hold my jacket. With a frown, Naruto accepted what she gave him. I believe this is my jacket. Tenten gave him a wink before strolling away. Not anymore, it isn't. I called dibs. Naruto laughed as he glanced down at Suichi. It's too bad. I really liked that jacket. Hey, she's worth it. Call out a few of my friends now. Anyone's in particular? No, simply visualize that you would like a few toads, and some will come. Make sure they're all about my size, please. Everyone my size is a friend of mine. Around lunchtime, Tenten went back to Naruto's side and discovered him contentedly chatting with a number of tiny toads while they gobbled up large amounts of candy. She walked up to Suichi, who waved at her with a webbed foot and looked up. Tenten, hello. I appreciate the candy. All of the guys adore it. Gamasuichi was glared at by a small brown toad that coughed. Yes, and the girls also adore it. Hee. Tenten sat down, leaning against Naruto, grinned, and gave the female toad a pat on the head. He gave her a smile before furrowing his nose. You stink. She retaliated by giving him a forceful shoulder punch. Asshole, I didn't complain about you this morning. That's because I smell like a rose garden after training. You're not getting this jacket back until you've showered. That's not fair. Them's the rules. I don't make 'em, I just enforce 'em. But you did make that up, it still stands. A messenger bird landed on the handle of the hammer as the two were joking around. Naruto raised his head and extended his finger. He pulled a small scroll and pushed the bird away after it hopped on it. He moaned as he read it quickly. Tenten scowled as he realized that she had wanted to stay with him for the remainder of the day. What's it say? Chan wants to talk to me about Kakashi and Sakura. While he was distracted, Tenten grabbed her jacket and slapped him over the head. She glared back at him as he glowered at her. Don't talk about Tsunade. Sama like that. With a sigh, Naruto rose and swung his hammer behind him. He dismissed the toads after instructing them to collect their candy. He grinned as he turned to face Tenten, who was holding her jacket. So dinner tonight? Grinning, she stood next to him and gave him a brief embrace. Sure, I'll wear my new jacket. Before he could respond, she departed. He sighed as he saw her disappear into the distance. It's my jacket, damn it. Naruto was not anticipating this discussion. It was true that he had never trained or collaborated extensively with another team before, and he had been considering what Tenten had told him. Despite their disagreements, Team Kakashi largely mastered the art of teamwork. Given their success rate, it would be challenging to persuade Tsunade to split them up, and he wasn't even certain if he wanted to at this point. Maybe the best course of action would be to just smile and take it like he did with everything else in life. What difference could a few more make? He'd endured them for years. I hoped he would maintain his sanity before he killed them. He paused to observe the people on the street who were whispering. They appeared to be staring at him in shock and terror. It wasn't until his chains screeched against one another that he realized what was wrong. He saw them slithering through the air when he looked up. He had been so absorbed in his thoughts that he had unintentionally pushed chakra into them, activating them. His restlessness was unabated by his agitation, and he violently withdrew the chakra, causing the chains to swiftly encircle his arms. Before heading out, he turned to face the wide eyed onlookers and shrugged and smiled foxy. Fantastic. Just one more time for them to despise me. With a defeated sigh, he proceeded to the Hokage Tower to present his case to Tsunade. If nothing else, he hoped she would give him a chance. Denied. Naruto hung his head and gave a low growl. The talks had not proceeded as expected. Without ever raising her voice, she had refuted every argument he made. However, she had questioned him about the purpose of the chains before they had even started talking. She had demanded a demonstration when he explained what they could do. Snaking around her desk, Naruto had opened the drawer, pulled out her bottle of sake, smiled, and tossed the chains into the air. Tsunade had demanded her sake back while sitting there looking dumbfounded. Perhaps, in retrospect, smashing her bottle against the wall had been a blow to his reputation. Most likely it had been a mistake. Was undoubtedly a poor choice. The fact that the damn things appeared to be taking on a life of their own, akin to his shadow clones, was not his fault. They grew increasingly independent the more he used them and the less he actually had to command them. He had been honing his control over shadow clones before Tenten discovered him that morning. The outcome had been just as she had discovered him. It was only in combat that he truly needed to focus. But right now, this line of thought was not taking him anywhere. He blew out a frustrated breath and met her gaze. Why? Tsunade steepled her fingers together and reclined in her chair. She had been extremely unhappy with Team 7 following her brief conversation with Kakashi. She was aware that Naruto had every right to insist on a transfer, but the team's record of success was too strong to stop them. They lacked an original member and were among her better teams. When he wasn't acting as a double agent for her with Danzo, Sai had shown himself to be a suitable substitute. Or she hoped that he was. It's possible that the boy is using her against Danzo. The position was uncomfortable. Because the three of you make a good team. Add Sai into the mix and you're a great team. And with Kakashi and Yamato switching in and out of a leadership role, your team needs to be a cohesive unit. I'm sorry Naruto, I really am, but I can't afford to break up a team such as yours. Not with the track record you guys have. It's not very often you guys fail, glaring exceptions aside. I have to think about what is best for the village. What about a one-time exception? Please Tsunade, I don't know how much longer I can take the two of them. I know I'm being hypocritical, since saving Sasuke was my main goal in life for quite a while, but we all have to grow up sometime. I just want to move on. The guy doesn't want to be saved and personally, I'm more than willing now to let him rot. With her chin now resting on her hands, Tsunade leaned forward and narrowed her eyes. Naruto, let me make this clear. I will not separate the three of you. I can't afford to. And if one of your missions states that you will take up a chance to find Sasuke, you will do it. You can grumble and gripe all you want, but, as a soldier under my command, you will do as you are told. Understood? Naruto bowed as he stood. Although he was certain that the other two would be pleased with this development, he wasn't. As much as he wanted to, he couldn't hold Tsunade responsible for this. What was this one request, though, given how little he asked for in this village? Hi, Hokage. Sama, I understand crystal clear. When Tsunade heard the honorific in the tone, her eyes widened. It was actually frightening, and she couldn't recall the last time the boy had been so angry. All Naruto had to do was sound normal to elevate his voice to terrifying heights. His usual cheerful manner added to his seriousness, and the silver gleam in his eyes didn't help either. He left the room to do whatever it was he was going to do before she could say anything. The sound of the downstairs door blowing wide open made Tsunade wince. It would actually be more accurate to say that it was blown off its hinges. In his hurry and mental state, Naruto had pushed the door out into the street without turning the knob, sending people running. From the window, she observed him stalking down the street while his chains twisted around him once more. In that state, no one would bother him, no matter how much they hated him. She slumped into her chair as her eyes drooped with sadness. Through the door, Shizune had heard the entire argument. Since she had to acknowledge that she had sided with Naruto and the two blondes were quite talkative, it wasn't difficult. Notwithstanding her disagreement, Tsunade's points were also persuasive, and in the end, her master had acted in Konoha's best interests. In place of her broken sake bottle, which Tsunade was currently lamenting, Shizune entered the room and poured her master a cup of tea. Lady Tsunade, why didn't you just let him transfer? You could have sent him to Anbu or something. He's not happy where he is. Tsunade commanded her assistant to shut the door after glancing up at her. After taking a sip of tea, she felt a little more at ease. Maybe talking to Shizune about the turn of events would help her make sense of her own choices. No matter how much he was right, I had to do what was best for the village. The village still puts the retrieval of the Uchiha on a very high priority to do list, and Kakashi's team has been tasked with that since they know him best. Naruto knows him well, and since he's fought him repeatedly, he's the best for the team. I can't deny that, and neither can you. No, but his happiness should be taken into consideration as well. He has a lot on his shoulders and he asks for so little. It seems he's procured a mature mindset at a very inopportune time. Yes, it would seem so. My apprentice still hasn't let go of her childishness, and Kakashi still pines for his ideal student. Want to know something? If Naruto had Sakura's control, I would have taken him as a student alongside Jiraiya. Enthusiasm and a willingness to learn such as his only come around once in a great while. He has no motivation to learning other than to get strong enough to protect everyone, and he has no underlying motive. He has every reason to get stronger to destroy this village and yet bears them no malice. He's the perfect student, and I can't teach him anything. And yet, he can't learn anything. What do you mean? With another sigh, Tsunade went to refill her cup. When Shizune did it instinctively, she grinned. Without her youthful counterpart, what would she ever do? Naruto seems to have an inability to learn anything that isn't dangerous or outright forbidden. Look at the shadow clones. Look at the Rasengan. Look at Kachiyose. He doesn't have many techniques, but the ones he does possess are powerful. And he uses them to full effect. What would be a detriment to others is his greatest strength. Like Lee, he's taken a negative and turned it into a positive. And now he has that hammer and those chains. And those eyes, I nearly pissed myself when I looked into them. I hope they never turn pure silver. Why? Because it's like looking into a mirror and all you see is your own ugliness and unfairness. It was like he was projecting his disappointment and pain into me. But Naruto would never do anything maliciously like that. No, he wouldn't. But what if he didn't know he was doing it? It was kind of like the paralysis jutsu, except I had free rein to move. I just couldn't. Sadness and disappointment seemed to permeate the air. I just hope I made the right decision. Shizune picked up the cups with a smile. They had finished their conversation. I'm sure things will work out in the end. Naruto always has a way of turning things around. I hope you're right. Do me a favor please and send for Kakashi and Sakura. Since they got their way, I want to lay down a few ground rules to them. After giving a nod, Shizune left the office. Soon, there would undoubtedly be more yelling. Right now, Tenten was the only thing Naruto desired. Nobody could soothe him if she couldn't. He had looked everywhere but was unable to locate her. It enraged me. With the intention of destroying an acre or two, he had finally given up and stalked off to the training grounds. Tenten discovered him there, idly using his chains to attack objects. She secretly hoped that he would get what he wanted and had been very upset that he had to go see the Hokage. Given his current condition, she makes the accurate guess that the opposite has actually occurred. In order to avoid smelling like a sweat sock factory when she finally saw him, she had gone home and showered. She didn't think he really cared. He enjoyed making fun of her. She was both saddened and afraid to see him in the state he was in now. It simply wasn't normal for the cheerful blonde to be so upset. She was standing at the edge of the clearing, and Naruto knew that his present attitude was preventing her from approaching. He had abandoned his hammer in the center of the clearing to use his hands to wreak havoc, and his chains were rattling all over the place. It always felt good to tear things apart with his fingers. His anger only intensified as he made an effort to relax so he could speak with her. He couldn't help but act like a child. No, forget about that. He could have avoided it. He simply didn't care right now. He wanted to act immature and childish about the circumstance. Maybe someone would dote all over him out of sympathy for him, but he had forgotten Tenten's identity. The weapons mistress became more and more enraged the more she observed him. He was clearly ignoring her now, and she detested being ignored more than anything else. Naruto wasn't going to start now because Neji had already done enough of that to her when she was younger. She strode forward, her eyes blazing with rage, and seized the Jinchuriki by the shoulder, turning him around so he had to face her. She was almost distracted from her goal by the icy expression in his eyes, but she had already lost too much to be deterred by a glance. She would not be disregarded. What do you want, Tenten? I'm kind of in a bad mood right now. I can see that, dumbass. I'm here to get you out of your funk. Let's go do something. Not interested. She gritted her teeth and narrowed her eyes. Excuse me? Not interested? Who in the hell do you think you are? Please, Tenten, just go away. I don't want to fight right now. Well, too bloody bad. You've got to fight now. I hate being ignored, Naruto, and you know that. Now you're going to tell me what's wrong or I'm going to beat it out of you. Go away, Tenten. I don't want to talk right now. Suddenly she brandished a sword and circled him, sneering all the way. I suggest you start talking then if you don't want to be cut to pieces. I'm tired of being told to go away by guys I like. I'm tired of being treated like dirt and I'm changing that with you. Now start talking. No, she rushed in and sliced across the belly of his shirt. His rage had diverted the chain's attention, causing them to fail to react promptly. Without hesitation, she moved out of range and kept circling. Talk. No, the chains prevented her from cutting his shoulder as she dashed in once more. She let a few senbon fly and struck him in the arm, so it wasn't a problem that her sword was blocked. With a grunt, he extracted them. Just go away please. You already know what happened. I don't want to talk about it. Her response was to keep hacking at him. He withdrew his chains and they started fighting after her weapon was eventually knocked away. Not spar, not brawl, not fight. They simply entered and began punching each other. The sound of heavy fists hitting flesh would have made even Guy and Lee cringe. Because she was not in the best of moods, Naruto ended up destroying him. She swept his legs out from under him just as Tenten's body and Naruto's mind were starting to tire. On the way down, he caught her by the waist and yanked her onto him. She pinned his arms and scowled at him after they struggled for a short while. He gave her the same fierce look in return as she uttered the first words she had said in a long time. Stupid idiot. Suddenly, she leaned down and kissed him, causing his eyes to widen before he gave him an equally passionate kiss in return. A simple kissing contest quickly turned into a full-fledged makeout session because they were both naturally competitive. Naruto disengaged them both and pulled himself into a sitting position, with Tenten half lying in his lap and half sitting, after they had somehow ended up rolling toward his hammer. Both of them were battered and bruised, though his would eventually heal. He ran his hands up and down her arms while she lay in his embrace. It was a calming, spine-tingling sensation. However, he had yet to respond to her query. So, how did it go? Naruto shook his head and let out a sigh. He still didn't trust his voice, so he didn't want to talk right now. I'm sure that Lady Tsunade had a good reason for not letting you transfer. Naruto let out a grunt. Tenten scowled. She's just looking out for what's best for you, Naruto. You and the village. It's not like you've ever worked with another team before. Yes, I have. When we went to retrieve Sasuke the first time, we were a very good team and we'd never worked together before. Shikamaru makes an excellent troop leader. That's beside the point. You all worked well together because you had a common goal and it was a high priority mission. None of you wanted to disappoint yourselves or Shikamaru. Still, I just wanted to get away from those two. Tenten let out a sigh and shuffled closer to him. How could the boy have been so warm all the time? It's for the best, Naruto. Just do the missions you're assigned to do and when you get back, go your separate ways. You don't have to like them to do a mission. You didn't get along with Sasuke all those years ago and you did fine. Just continue on like normal. When he looked down, she looked up into his face and grinned at him. Besides, when you get back you've got me waiting for you, isn't that reward enough? With a laugh, Naruto put his arms around her and gave her a squeeze. I guess it's an okay consolation prize. Tenten turned around, huffing and crossing her arms after slugging him in the arm. Jackass, she didn't fight, she enjoyed the feeling too much. Naruto laughed and drew her to him. You like it, ah. So, where are we heading this evening? Shortly after Naruto's departure, Kakashi and Sakura were called, and now they stood in front of Tsunade, wondering why they had been called. Tsunade sat in her usual position, chin on her folded hands, looking from one to the other. She was not happy with her choice, and she didn't like being the reason behind Naruto's unhappiness, and when that boy was unhappy, bad things happened. Previously, it was pranks on a large scale, but now, who knew what he'd do? I want you two to sit down and don't speak unless I direct you to. Sakura and Kakashi sat in the chairs in front of her desk and nodded. Whatever was going to be said was crucial, and neither of them wanted to be punished for disobedience. Tsunade sighed and started massaging her temples, attempting to ease the increasing pain. All right, have a look. After giving your points some thought, I gave Naruto an opportunity to convince me. After listening to both, I've decided that your team will remain cohesive. At least their team would stay together, even if one member was unwilling. Naruto was an essential member of the team, and if he wasn't there, the whole thing might as well disband. Sakura smiled slightly, and Kakashi sat up straight again, coughing into his hand. I'm glad you decided to keep our team together, Tsunade-sama, but what did Naruto think of this? When we last spoke with him, he appeared to be quite angry with us. Despite his dissatisfaction with the arrangements, Naruto grudgingly consented to remain with you. I would now like to talk about the future objectives of your team. Tsunade, who had forgotten to mention that she had essentially coerced Naruto into agreeing to this, watched as the two tensed up once more. I want you both to know that I concur with Naruto that Konoha no longer views Sasuke as a top priority. The Hunter Corps is considering pursuing him because he is a missing nin. But Tsunade. Sama, I told them to wait until I was done, like I said, ahem. You no longer prioritize Sasuke. Team 7, one of my best frontline teams, will keep up their missions. You will complete the tasks I assign you with the help of Naruto's heavy fighting and demolition abilities, Kakashi's leadership and Sharingan, Sai's espionage, and Sakura's medical expertise. Unless instructed otherwise, you will not look for the Uchiha. That's all, clearly? Sakura and Kakashi gave a grim nod, knowing that arguing would be pointless and harmful to their health given Tsunade's current state. They left without a backward glance, walking off together to celebrate their victory, hoping that their blonde teammate wouldn't be too upset about it all. At Ichiraku's, said blonde was currently engaged in a conversation with Tenten, who had skipped dinner that night in favor of an early dinner and then retiring to Tenten's apartment to watch a movie, play a game, or do anything else. As the days passed, Tenten's admiration for Naruto grew. She was starting to believe that the angel had not so much given Naruto cognitive thought, as had opened his eyes to all the things he had done wrong. Prior to his near-death experience, he would have been slurping the noodles like there was no tomorrow, but now he ate with dignity, which was a welcome change. Between idly chatting with his dinner companion and feeling guilty about eating so delicately, well, delicately for him, as he had only finished 4 bowls, Naruto was killing time. What do you think of us, Naruto? Tenten couldn't contain his laughter as the blonde coughed on some noodles and slammed his fist into his chest, and Naruto turned shakily to her after catching his breath. What are you talking about, us? We are not yet there. Best to let him ponder what she was giving him. Tenten batted her eyelashes at him before returning to her ramen. No, not just yet, but if you'd like, there might be. She left that hanging there in the air. Other than Ayame talking animatedly to Tenten and Tucci making fun of Naruto for not accepting the bun-haired girl's offer, their dinner was quiet. After they finished, they walked to Tenten's apartment to continue their evening, with Tenten congratulating herself for taking his mind off his problems, if only briefly, and Naruto lost his train of thought the entire way. As soon as the door was closed, Tenten pulled him into the living room, pushed him onto the couch, and left him in a slightly bewildered. Tenten instantly withdrew to her bedroom and closed the door. What the devil was she doing? She was constantly making fun of the poor boy. What if he accepted her offer? She stopped and considered it for a moment before smiling. What were the possible drawbacks of dating a very attractive and powerful man? Other than the fact that the entire village would reject her for dating the demon brat, there weren't many. However, ninjas were already a socially awkward group, and they relied on one another for support. It wasn't as if she gave a damn what the civilians thought. Naruto sat on the couch and considered his options. Their dinner had taken a long time, and he had spent several hours talking to Tenten and chatting with the Ichirakus. The father and daughter pair were just nice people, and anyone could waste time talking to them. Would dating Tenten be beneficial? Sure, they had made out and played around, and she was a big tease, but he didn't want her to get hurt. It was bad enough that the villagers didn't like him. He didn't want her to be shunned by society for being in a relationship with him. However, if she wanted a relationship with him, she was aware of the risks. The little toad was quickly becoming one of Naruto's favorite summons, and he had summoned Gamasuichi for a game of Go because he was getting bored waiting for Tenten to emerge from her bedroom. Gamakichi was simply too damned big now to fit into the small apartment, so his younger relative would have to do. Tenten left after this game. After deciding to change into her nightwear, which consisted of sweatpants and a tank top, Tenten noticed that Naruto had taken out her coffee table and was sitting in front of the couch with his legs crossed, while Suichi was sitting on the table, considering his move choices. She smiled and walked behind Naruto, sitting on the couch with him between her legs. She was greeted with a sigh of satisfaction, and she wrapped her arms around Naruto's shoulders. Whatever you had inside, take care of it. Mostly, what are you doing? Losing to a frog. Toad. Amphibian. I'm terrible at this game. What's the deal with being my girlfriend, then? I wanted to know what you think first. With a shrug, Naruto attempted to pincer the small toad. You are aware of my identity. You are aware of the dangers. I would be honored if you wanted to be with me, but how are we going to inform everyone? Tenten put his face in her hands and slid down next to him, grinning. I think we'll let them figure it out on their own. Tenten hefted his weight off her and cursed at the miserable device as her clock rang out and the boy slumped over on top of her, just as she had secured his lips in hers and started to slide her tongue inside his mouth. Oh well, we'll continue this in the morning. Damn clock. You really oppose me, don't you? Sanosuke had warned her that he would be out like a light, so she left him lying on the floor and went to her comfortable bed, but why did it have to happen while she was making out with him? Gamasuchi sat on the table, wondering what the devil had happened, and dismissed himself, saying that he would ask for his candy the next time, because his summoner and his girlfriend were the strangest people he had ever encountered.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.